What's up? What's up? What's up? How you guys doing? How you guys doing? Good evening. Good evening. The mic okay? Always very sketched out by the mic. Good. The dog's still standing. It's stayed. We love the vibes tonight. It's definitely a darker, chiller vibe. Not the chillers. I think the chillers get mentioned in the video. Thanks, A-Faye, for the prime. 14 months. Dan the Man for the 15. Martin's Lat for the 15. I do have a very small announcement that I think it shouldn't really be exciting to you guys because it's a way for me to extract more of your money. But text to speech should be enabled for bits donations, or if you go down with my Twitch page, there's like a direct donation kind of thing, and that should work. I tried to test it. I failed testing it. So if you are one of those people who like, I need Cory to see my message, you have an option now. Martins, thanks for the 5 gifted. And Kristen for the 16 months, or 15 months rather. Come on, I don't give you too much credit, Kristen. But Martins, what's up, man? How do you do that? The bits thing is in the bottom left. It's like next to channel points. You can get bits, and basically the difference is bits like gives Twitch 30%, and My Way doesn't give Twitch 30%, but it's to each their own. Whatever works. I'm not complaining. Do you have to be on laptop? I don't believe so. But look, I don't donate $100 text to speech. Let's make sure it works first. But thank you, Martins, again. How are you, man? You got any questions? You just chilling? Spoiler chillers do get mentioned in the video. This is huge. It's not coming up for me. What's not coming up for you? The bits or? There's if you scroll down on my channel, there's a panel that's Bowie Jane's face that you can click on, and that should work. It's a minimum of $3, just because if it was like $1, then you could just have people. I don't want to hurt the big streaming experience for everyone else. So there's a whole section in the video about BB25. Good, because I have some thoughts about that season. Shockingly. I only watched half of it. I watched about 2 minutes of it, and I was like, I should wait for stream for this. Oh, whoa. Since when? What are you talking about, Katie? One of the best BB video essays. It's a meaty one. It's 2 hours and 21 minutes. So I need you guys to dial the fuck in. When are you dropping the BB Ken 10 finale? I think I'm going to drop that next Tuesday, or this Tuesday. And then the podcast will be Friday. We're just going to flip them for now. I see, Katie. I see. Do you want her to work with Blue? Who is her and who is Blue? I have so many questions. This feels like a TTS question. My chat is so behind, RIP. Yeah. Yo, killed the radio star. Please, no challenge talk. There won't be. The one thing I do find funny is everyone thinking the spoiler sources are fake because they're just not spoiling expeditiously this time, which I've been orbiting a fan of the challenge for a long time, so like obviously, you know, they're not fake, but I do think it's pretty funny of like the influx of Big Brother fans being like, what the fuck? Scammers. It's not like our Big Brother spoilers are much better. Like, and granted, Big Brother, it's like kind of hard to spoil. You know, it's probably a harder mission just in terms of like there's, you know, the live aspect, but it is kind of funny. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. 1 second. It's from before you say freak out. It's Zach. Relax. If I see one fucking mention of that phone call anywhere online, swear to God. Friends to Reddit. Cory got a call. Exactly. So did you guys enjoy the Turner Pound Town podcast? I love Turner. He's so chill. Like I don't. It's almost like how'd he get on Big Brother? Like I totally know how he got on. He has a big personality and he knows how to turn it on. But like he's not. He's normal, dude. He's a normal dude. I feel like we got. It was very like. Sometimes it's hard when you talk to someone on like a podcast medium because they're very chill in person, but then they get a little bit stiff. They close up a little bit. Not Turner, except for his opinion on Matt. Yeah, he stepped in it on that one. He knew he shouldn't have said it too. He's like, "Young, I know people might not like it, but I'm like, brother, you could have just, you're so close." He'd be a good therapist. I disagree with that. He's a good listener. I think as a therapist, I'd be like, Turner, I'm very depressed. This horrible thing happened at work. He'd be like, oh, yeah, man. That's tough. Like, someone said Turner is a chill Quinn, and I see it. I like the framing of Quinn is a insane Turner. But either way works. Trying to even make sense of the sentence. How can I lose? All right, before we dive into this video, because I don't want to wait too long, because it's a feature length film. Anything going on the Big Brother Reddit? Nothing. All right, perfect. I was gonna share my screen. There's nothing to share. There's nothing going on at all. Law school update. What did I say last time? I was between two cities at this point. I still have like 8 schools to hear from, but right now it's 2 schools that are very similar level, similar money. So it's a real decision. Severance Reddit though. I have not been watching Severance. Don't spoil. Yeah, and like another acceptance. Oh yeah, I've been accepted into 3 schools, but one school is considerably worse than the other 2, so it's not even really in the calculation. Zach won as a demon today. Oh shit. He's lucky I wasn't in there. I was asked, but I had to say no. I was too busy. Thanks, Jennifer. How you doing? Uh, define worse. Like it's ranked significantly worse. Like academically. If a worse school offers a floor ride, will you take it? Yeah, of course. Like that's a huge part of the equation. But like there's Harvard, right? Let's put Harvard up here, and then there's like the really great schools like a Georgetown, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, right? Could I get into Harvard? No. Could I get into these schools? Probably not. But if I do get in, they'd give me no money. Then there's this tier of schools under that that's like good school, um, but I would be like not a get for them, but it's like okay, my score is a little bit above what they want. My GPA is a little bit above what they want, so they'll be willing to give me money. And then there's schools below that are like, I'm gonna give you $1 million. Please attend for one semester. So I'm in that third tier right now of like these are good schools. They're willing to give me money. Hence why that fourth tier is not worth it. You see Ludwig at the Lakers game? Yeah, it was One Piece night. Excited for book club tomorrow? Yes. It's going to be good. Why do you ask questions, Martins? It has to be the person who gifts all the subs. Asking questions I'm not answering. I finished the reading today, period. Good. It's a good part. The end game. What's crazy is we're watching this movie, and then I'm going to the gym after pre-workout. So bad. We are in a degenerate little phase of my life right now. You won your debate with Zach? Oh yeah, people like that. I was on RHAP. It was right after I ended stream on Thursday. I got a DM, or I guess a text from Sam and then Zach being like, "Yo, can you jump on the podcast for 5 minutes?" So I did. But Zach and I debated the Survivor 50 voting stuff on RHAP for his recap podcast for the first episode. I'm drunk in a party. Let me have this. You're drunk in a party gifting subs. Okay, everyone in chat, lock in. It is time to take advantage of Martins. He's drunk and he's in a gifting mood. How can we do this? We need a meeting of the minds right now. Okay? He said he's out at 3 a.m. This is even better. This has I might not need scholarships for law school. This is the path. Anyways, hope you're having a good time. In order to Uber home, gift 5 subs. Yeah. Are you guys ready? I think we have to start. It's too long of a video to wait. It's simply too long of a video. Sorry if I missed it before, but do you like the Jimmy trade? I love the Jimmy trade. Sucks for the Heat, but it was never going to happen. I respect Jimmy, what he did for our franchise, but it makes Golden State a competitive team, which they owe to Steph. All right, and they have a lot of good role players and defenders. We can also hit that 1.25. I don't think so. I think we're going to let it rip. Thanks for the cameo, of course. All right, are you guys ready? Let's blast it, desktop audio, okay.
Okay, good. You're finally here. So just stay right there. I have one episode already set up for you to watch now. Though we're going to have to watch at least 2 more episodes after this so you can see how a full week of the game works. And that may seem like a lot, but like, trust me. It's going to fly by. This is a great season. It's a lot of fun. It's going to sell you on.
Everyone have your snacks, have everything. Once we get in, we're not stopping. Whoa.
Literally, fuck off.
All right. Okay. I'm glad I paused.
Literally, fuck off.
Anonymous, thank you for gifting 25 subs. What's this about? I turn on TTS, I'm like, oh my god, the donations are going to flood in. Instead, people are just gifting subs like usual. Can't have shit in this world. Anonymous, thank you. I appreciate it. For movie night, all this hype. There's 170 viewers, 25 gifts. Like 1/7 of the people have subs now. This is huge. What a public service you've done. Anon got paid, or they're wasted, and they're going to charge back tomorrow. Either way, I'm down.
Fuck off.
Anonymous really said this 3-hour stream? How about 3 hours and 4 minutes?
Literally, fuck off.
25 gifted. We're close to 400 subs, depending on what you consider close. Martin gifts Olivia.
Literally, fuck off.
We are so back. Can you dispute gifting subs? Yes. I could fight that, but I obviously wouldn't. All right, Martins. Chill with the alcohol. You're good. But thank you so much, Martins, and thank you so much, Anonymous. 25 is ridiculous. Literally fuck off for hours now.
On the show, okay?
Like
Trust me.
Thank you.
We actually have someone who wants to say hello to you and has and comes bearing gifts. So why don't you go and greet your friend there?
The Colonel!
Literally, fuck off.
Okay, just give me 1 minute to explain. So, to get ahead of everything, I'm about to speak very, very
Is the
seriously
video audio okay?
about a show where people get slimed. They have to dress up in costumes ranging from a chicken to a banana to a chicken to a rocket ship to another chicken. There's a robot.
Heather, thank you for the 5 gifted.
Literally, fuck off.
I lowered the audio. What's going on today? Is it Saturday? We all got paid for the week? Is that what happened? But thank you, Heather. I appreciate you.
Literally, fuck off.
5 gifties. You're crazy. Congrats on law school, Cory. Thank you. I do appreciate that. Hopefully I got more good news coming.
Who comes in and insults people once a year with lame jokes. And you'll often see people unironically telling the camera stuff like this.
It smells worse
Way too
than
much
a
Cameron
porta
and
potty
Jack so
at
far.
the Jersey Shore after an all-you-can-eat wings competition. I mean, this thing is disgusting.
There's no shortage to the number of reasons I'm embarrassed to admit
From that to showing whole, it's crazy how Big Brother changes you.
to any soul that I watch Big Brother, and I'm correct to feel that way. If you watch it, you should be embarrassed too. However, at the same time, if I were to successfully corner you in a
Cameron's
room
got the
to
winners in it
explain
right
myself, there would also be no shortage to the number of ways I think that a bunch of
Polly.
strangers being stuck in a house for 3 months and voting each other out and fighting for power and survival in this made-up game as cameras film them 24/7
James is so small.
is fascinating, engrossing, supremely effective in its game mechanics, and legitimately something that teaches us about people in ways that few other shows can. This is a constant dichotomy that any fan like myself has to grapple with, because modern day Big Brother is essentially these two polar opposite potentials always being at war with each other. In every aspect of the show, from the
I'm gonna keep it
strategic
at this
game,
speed.
to the tone, to the
I'm down to hang.
competitions, to the storytelling, everywhere is a battle between what the show naturally is and should be, and what the people behind the scenes, whether network executives or the show's direct producers, try to force it to become.
Yeah, I saw an article today about how like Big Brother ratings are not keeping up with its competitors, which like obviously it's doing better than most non-network shows, but it's not keeping up with like Survivor and stuff. And it's like, how the fuck can you expect it to? It's very similar to like why basketball does so much worse than football. Like there's no urgency for a basketball game. There's 82 games in a season. For Big Brother, there's 3 episodes a week. It's not an event in the same way. Like it's just a different kind of show. Like it fills up time in the schedule and it's super cheap to make. Like Survivor, for how much fucking money it costs, it fucking better bring in the viewers. You know, like I think it's people just have to like contextualize what Big Brother is. But
The end results being it bouncing between either overly simple nonsense that tonally ranges from trashy to campy, and really just airs to fill in empty space in the summer TV schedule without much further thought, to a psychologically interesting, strategic, cerebral social experiment. Watching 26 seasons of those two sides clashing, with the latter losing out quite often nowadays, is pretty frustrating. Yet season after season, myself and
I like the
everyone
NBA.
else who complains endlessly about everything this show does
oh,
wrong,
I hate Big Brother
we
23.
always come back, despite all the
I like the
signs
season. I would hate being on that cast. It's like they had way too much fun. Same with
saying not to.
BB26.
Its potential
many
is
antics.
just too great and too clear. This happens every single time. So to make every future instance of this easier on myself, I just want to have my self-rationalization conveniently organized in video form. Now to be clear, I'm specifically talking about the US version of the show. I have thoughts on the Canadian version too, but overall it has its own separate strengths and issues.
I think
so
a lot
I'm not
of
gonna
the
get too into
issues are
that.
the same,
You can make a
but
whole
there
other
are a few
video on it.
differences.
Otherwise, we're completely ignoring the many, many other versions of the show in different countries, some of which seem significantly more popular than the US version, but they're even more different, so we're just going to focus on Big Brother US, which is its own animal. Because this series began 1 year after the idea was first presented in 1999 in the Dutch version of the show. That period,
Thanks, Martins, for the gift to Manda Pants. I appreciate you.
the summer of 2000,
One more shot.
was when reality television, especially reality competition shows, were very clearly on the rise. Survivor's first season had just started airing that spring and became an immediate juggernaut of TV.
God.
So Big Brother was set up
I can't
well
believe
to
Big
ride
Brother
that
made it
wave
to
as
season
another
2.
CBS show based around players being voted out one by one. Specifically, Big Brother's format was that 10 people enter and will live in the house that isn't really a house, it's something built on a studio lot. There are microphones and cameras everywhere, with footage obviously being used in episodes, but also close to 24-hour live feeds being available to anyone online who wanted to watch them. With that concept of always being watched, tying into the name Big Brother, being a nod to George Orwell's
I wonder the
1984.
percentage of BB Superfans
Then,
have actually seen
after
season
moving
1.
into the house,
I tried.
every
Couldn't do
other
it.
week, each house guest would vote for 2 other players to be put up for elimination. The players with the most votes would be nominated, and then the audience would vote for which of those house guests to be eliminated, until we reach the final 3, where the audience votes for a winner that gets $500,000. Simple as that. This first season of Big Brother aired through that entire summer, on the same channel as Survivor, often on the same night through a period where Survivor was getting at least 24 million US viewers an episode, with its finale being viewed by nearly 52 million. The absolute perfect companion for another new reality series to have to help earn new viewers. Your audience is already organized for you. It's as easy of a layup as any show could have asked for.
Yeah, I mean, the formula works. Like Big Brother UK, because Celebrity Big Brother UK
when it aired on the same night as Survivor, it did pretty alright. 22 million for its premiere and a lot of 16, 17 millions. But the main issue is that it basically aired 5 other days a week. There are 70 episodes of this season, most of which couldn't even crack 9 million viewers.
Yeah, this is very Love Island.
Not only is it a ton to keep up with, it's also not like all of that is amazing content. There's plenty of downtime, and the game mechanics don't really shake up the house dynamics much because it firstly happens so slowly. It's 12 episodes before the first person leaves the house, and he was the person adding the most conflict there anyways. And secondly, when being liked by the audience is all that matters in the end, there isn't a ton for the house guests to actively do in relation to the game. Producers throw in a challenge once in a while for them to do as a group for a reward, like getting a certain amount of miles on an exercise bike by the end of the week. But again, there aren't many layers to those. Even the natural human interest of these strangers getting to know each other and having to live together can only get you so far across 70 episodes. Overall, most episodes are just slow-paced, lightly edited slice of life. And then one episode a week is more like a news program than a reality game show, where the host Julie Chen will talk with relatives of the house guests, or psychology experts, or betting experts to recap and bring in commentary on the events of the week. You could meet the most obsessed Big Brother fans, and odds are fair that most, if not all of them, skipped season 1. It's just not a great television product.
Who is the sexiest
Enough so
house
that
guest?
it nearly was canceled then and there, and was likely only renewed for a second season after it was decided to bring in a few new executive producers, the most crucial of which being Arnold Shapiro, to help make several changes to the show's format. What worked in the Netherlands wasn't going to work in the US. And that brings us to the actual start of Big Brother.
Who would win sexiest house guest
Season 2 is revamped with a format where every week there's a competition. A very low budget competition to decide who's the head of household or HOH for that week. Whoever's HOH is safe for that week, they nominate any 2 of the other house guests for eviction, and rather than being up to the audience, all the house guests who aren't HOH and aren't nominated vote out one of the 2 nominated house guests. So like Mike Boogie wins the first HOH, he nominates Nicole and Cheryl for eviction. Of the other 8 house guests, 3 vote to evict Nicole, while 5 vote to evict Cheryl. So Cheryl goes home. And that continues week to week, with whoever won the prior HOH competition not being eligible to compete in the following week. Except for the last one.
Alright, we got a real format. Let's go!
All the way up to the final 2, where, again, rather than the audience voting for a winner, all the evicted players come back and vote between the 2 remaining to crown a winner.
How do you guys feel about America having a vote?
Immediately like a million times more interesting.
Not America.
It's a format designed for power to shift.
Like BB Can
to cause
style.
players to consider, worry, and be prepared for anybody in that house coming into the power position the next week.
Let's not do it for women.
And the crucial piece is simply having every piece of agency within the game
don't like
in the hands of the players.
The
lack of that is why Season 1 wasn't as strong of a fit with Survivor's first season as CBS thought. In the grand scheme of things, people were just sitting around, talking, cooking, playing games. But now there's actual intrigue to the game, as the social dynamics of the house have greater consequences, people make alliances,
if we had a basketball court, holy
deals,
fuck, it'd be so fun.
And even more so, it adds to the psychological aspects of the show
pegged as too much of a
people
threat,
grapple with these sort of power dynamics and having the fate of someone who you've been living with for however many weeks in your hands. Because often, as we see in this very season, when you're in that position, whether you're one of the house guests voting to evict someone, or especially if you're the HOH who nominated them, you feel like the bad guy, even though this is the position that on paper you want to stay in. And the thing is, people don't like feeling like the bad guy. They don't like feeling guilty, especially with America watching. So they're also resistant to owning who they are within the game and just saying, hey, this game is for $500,000. I'm willing to lie and betray for that. They won't just say it.
We had AFP success,
with the exception of one person.
If you give me your word that if you win HOH, you won't nominate both Nicole and I.
Couple hits and a miss.
Keep you here for another week.
All right.
Or we'll keep you here, whatever.
I've promised Hardy and Nicole that I wouldn't nominate them both. I clearly would nominate them both. I would stab them both in the back and leave them to bleed, on the kitchen floor, and I wouldn't even clean it up. And if I did, I'd use a dirty towel and leave it on the bathroom floor.
Everyone else does what's very natural for people to do, which is rationalize and move the goalposts to make yourself feel better. Saying, actually, I'm not really betraying you because you broke my trust earlier, so when you think about it, you're the real bad guy and you deserve to go home. Or, yeah, I know I said before that I was going to play this game just to help one of you two win because you both deserve it, but thinking about it more, I really need this money to help my grandma.
I said Hardy was George Washington,
I'm gonna vote
right?
you out and try to win myself, which really seems like the selfless thing to do, honestly. It just continues as people smell the money more and get more.
Sorry. Someone put something insane in chat I need to address. Tiffany Taylor Davon deserved. I mean, you could argue for Derek X for 23 or like Danny or Tyler for 22, but make the case for Danny in 22 for me. You don't get to just sneak that in there. Go on. Cook. Even Tyler. But, I get Tyler just like that kind of guy. Sorry.
More and more attached to the power they hold in the game.
There are several people in this house that I feel like I can trust. And when that trust is betrayed,
also,
you finally
Derek
just say, my God, this is just a pit of predators and they're backstabbing, manipulative phonies.
These strongly human aspects to the show are always the most interesting. Danny was the only one in the
main alliance to try to go against it. Is that even true? I feel like Danny was like the biggest loyalist in 22 ever. Danny was against Tyler, I suppose, but like she tried to go against him at like the final 8 or 7 of a 6-person alliance.
And it's a major narrative through its second season, all the way down to the final 2, where someone who's very conflicted on their time in the house in many ways, and because of that is more hesitant to accept their agency in the game for what it was, loses handily to someone who, while arrogant and a bigger liar than anyone else there, is and always was more transparent and understanding in how he played.
I knew you were going to play this game the way you did. Much respect for you. I'm not mad at you. And I voted for you, baby. Congratulations.
All right, I just have to make it official. Congratulations, Will. By a vote of 5-2, you are the winner of Big Brother 2.
By modern TV standards, Season 2 is still a bit slow. It was cut down to 3 episodes a week and 30 episodes overall, with arguably still not quite enough strong content to consistently fill that out. But that little bit more breathing room gives the editors time to tell an actual story in these episodes by putting their footage together with more creativity and precision. And I do hold the season overall in high regard. That main storyline of people managing the guilt in the game, which thematically comes...
I think Big Brother 2 has a really strong argument for the most overrated season in Big Brother history, but I think that's fine. It's kind of like I think Survivor Borneo's a lot better than Big Brother 2. But like Big Brother 2 on an episode-to-episode basis is kind of terrible. When you zoom out and just think of the good stuff, it's awesome.
Comes up a lot through the early points of reality competition shows, is always fascinating. The strategic game has real footing, especially with its winner taking a less obvious
Joseph
path
was a
that,
feeds guy.
after a certain point, he actively avoided winning HOH to instead just be a voter or often even be nominated on the block. A strategy that on paper you would scoff at. And tonally, more so than BB1, it lies in this specific sweet spot where it's a serious strategic game, but it's also pretty camp. It's just silly a lot of the time.
Didn't sound
Well,
right
to sum
coming
it
out of his
up,
mouth.
the climax of the season is at the final four head of household competition, where the dominating alliance of Nicole and Hardy are out of the competition after having won the last 3 HOHs. So now their only hope of staying is if Will wins. Because as shown before, Will promised that if he won, he wouldn't nominate the two of them. So they trusted him and kept him in the game. But obviously, Will doesn't have much interest in maintaining that deal. That's because he's had a building resentment towards the other players since very early in the game, when they flipped things against Will's initial alliance and sent his friends home in weeks 3 and 4, leaving him alone
Nicole and
and
Will,
with
whatever
no
happened
options
between them was
but to
interesting.
lay low,
Interesting
not
is
win
one
any
word for it.
competitions, look powerless,
From the hot tub's perspective,
beatable,
certainly
and then
interesting.
cozy up to and slowly earn the trust of the
From
two
the banner
people with the
planes
most power in the game, so that
perspective.
they'll always opt to vote out the other person on the block over him, all while endlessly making fun of them to the cameras and biding his
Yeah,
time
sentient,
until he
yeah.
sees an opportunity. So he waits and waits and waits until this moment where after Nicole lets go of her key and she's out of the competition and it's just down to Will and the current outsider, Monica, a secret temptation is then offered to whoever drops from the competition. And Will, who really just wants an excuse to lose, has already tapped out as I was explaining this.
All right. Congratulations, Monica.
This dooms Hardy and Nicole.
So
who are
funny.
instantly regretting every single time they could have voted him out but didn't.
Bucky even said, you're going to regret voting me out and keeping Will in. Well, not even 3 or 4 hours after the fact, I'm definitely regretting letting Will stay here.
I've never had such
Nicole is such a character.
immense distaste for anybody in my entire life.
It's being right after the banner plane, right after.
Ever.
I don't know how I'm gonna sleep at night. The blame
Yes,
rests
I
on
know
my
sentient,
shoulders.
but we could just, leave
It's
more to
what
the
the
imagination.
entire season has been building towards. It's what Will has been preparing for weeks. It's the last big hurdle that the dominant force in the game needed to get through before they were home free. It's the most instant and direct betrayal of the whole season. And as that culmination of the past 8 weeks fills the air with so much tension, regret, and anger as these two are stewing in the mistakes they made, let's see what Will's up to with his secret prize.
I must be the luckiest boy in all of the land, maybe even
I'm
the
kind
whole
of curious
town. I
what
won the
this
Big Brother peanut
video's
butter jar.
doing. It's kind of because I get like the thesis, but this feels like a big deviation. Are they just gonna go
As
through like the
people
whole
he's
history
just
of the show?
betrayed are staring daggers
I'm
at
sure
him,
at the end of the
just
season
filled with
he'll talk
utter
about it, but-
disgust for him. He's having so much fun playing around with a giant peanut butter jar, basically rubbing in their faces that he stabbed them in the back for something as lame as this. It's so dumb. Like, Big Brother is both smart and stupid, but at this point in the show's life, those
There's a-
aspects aren't in each other's way.
Yeah, I think Big Brother 25 has the best example of this. Of the most pivotal strategic week of the season is also the goofiest week of the season, and I think it works. Maybe not on the episodes as well, but like I think in general it adds to the Big Brotherness of it all.
The show has almost fully figured itself out now. The game format just gets a
BB3
few
is
more
so good.
adjustments over the course of the next few seasons. Like in addition to the
This
HOH
season stands
competition
test
each
of time.
week, following nominations, there's another one called the Power of Veto competition. Whoever wins that can either keep those nominations the same or remove someone from the nomination block and make the HOH choose a replacement nominee. So in addition to just having another thing to help fill out those 3 episodes a week,
I'm sad
it
Monica
adds
wasn't on
variance,
BB7.
lets the power and capital
It would have been
of
a
the
fun
house
pick,
be
but
spread out
I'm
a
okay
little
with
more within
it.
a given week,
I think they did a really
and
good
makes
job
the
with the
social
cast.
game dynamics
The only girl I would
more
take off
complicated
for
to
her, I guess,
maneuver,
be Erica.
because now you need to avoid even being somebody's backup
Yes, this is
target.
the strengths
The
of the
week
format.
can't be
This
locked
was
down
BB2.
right after the nominations are made anymore. In a
Strengths
few
of the format,
days,
let's
maybe
hear it.
the initial target is saved and you could go up instead. So that wrinkle pretty much finalizes Big Brother's format. The few other tweaks, like sequestering the jurors and other stuff, I don't need to get too into the weeds on that or else I'll never stop. Basically, HOH, nominations, veto, eviction. That's the core of how Big Brother works. And as far as these sort of social
Sure.
strategy shows that I know about go, I think it's probably the best format. It forces you to
Whoa,
walk such a
genius shout out.
tightrope where you want everyone's guns pointing at each other and not you. You cannot afford to avoid managing the trust of some outsider,
Is he DR?
because
Ah,
even
poor
if
Cameron.
everyone else in the house is with you,
Cory!
and the odds are
Wait,
in
no, I
your
wasn't even
favor,
there yet.
in some crapshoot competition, there's always
There I
a
am.
chance that the one person who you ignored ends up winning, and then you're on the block. And when you're on the block, people start talking about you. And when people start talking about you, information comes out. Maybe things you've said to this person, but not that person. Or things you said about that person to this person,
Ah, look at this
etc.,
little
etc.
Big Brother
And then your
25
game
analogy.
could quickly fall apart. In comparison to something like Survivor, which has a great format in its own right, but just for comparison with the core, early stripped down format of that, where everyone in the tribe votes to eliminate one player, if you have a majority alliance and you maintain all the trust within that alliance, the group pretty much has the game on lock. If there's someone on the outs who thinks you're in
Yeah.
charge and wants to target you, there's not much they can do if you've managed your people well. That's
Big Brother is kind of the same. Like Survivor, their format is very stiff, so to fix it, they added a billion twists and stuff, and a lot of people think they overdid it. Big Brother basically came to the same fucking issue, where like the strong people would just work together and have a majority and win every week. And then they added the AI arena to try to disrupt it. Like, it's a little different because theoretically people
because
could win comps.
each
but
round, power is spread out equally
even
among
last
the
season,
players
like, it
of
was
the
more
game.
equitable, but
Each
Tucker
player
won
has
everything
one
he
vote,
could,
and that's
MJ
pretty
won
much
basically
it.
everything else.
One player will win immunity, but they don't necessarily earn extra power with that, only safety. So there, you can more confidently set up a structure and ride it out. In Big Brother, though, power is a mobile entity
think,
that's purposefully
Suri's
designed
gonna be on
to
50?
shift week to week. Any attempts to always keep that power fully within your court will require much more running around. Because the overall game kinda does evenly distribute power, just in a very different way.
Dude,
In that there's
no.
a brief point each week,
Probably
after the
not.
eviction has happened and the prior
I'd
head
be
of household no
surprised.
longer has any power, where everybody
She's
else
great
is in the
casting.
same
She'd be
place
fun.
for,
It's just like,
on average, maybe like 20 minutes. During that
I'd be
time,
surprised.
any one of them could be the next HOH, and there are countless different directions in which the week could unfold.
I mean, they
Only
wouldn't
once the
invite
next
her
HOH
because
is
there's so many
crowned
people they have to
does the
invite,
power
and she's died
distribution
4
become
times already.
wildly uneven in a completely new way. You have to maneuver
She has a
through
spot if she
all
wants
those
it. I
uneven
think
power
I think
structures,
she'd want it.
but do so while always
I think
accounting
it's her choice.
for those
She's doing
20
it.
minutes at the end of the week. Have everyone's guns pointing at anybody.
Like, I think y'all have a, like, thinking about Big Brother, like, the version of Suri that you guys saw on Big Brother didn't seem like she was very passionate to go on reality TV, but, like, eventually, when she's accepted 5 shows in the past year, like, she clearly wants to do it. You know, she wants to do stuff.
But you.
As soon as
They owe her at least $2 million. They don't owe her shit. She got screwed, but a lot of players get screwed. And she already won her show. If she didn't win Traitors, maybe I'd be with you.
Kaser
But she
won head
already,
of
she already got her
household,
win. It's
it
fine.
looked like everybody had, that deer in the headlights
And yeah, they tried to give her a second win, but you know.
look. Like, holy moly, I can't believe he won. I'll tell you what, this is a game now.
Everything
Well, she's
can
already
change
on
on
another
a dime.
season of Survivor.
So having nobody in the house ever
So if she's on
targeting
50, you'll have 2 more seasons of Survivor. Sorry.
you is the absolute optimal way to play. But it's
Her appearance
not
fee
the
is probably
only
high as
way
hell.
to play.
I don't think so. I have no idea about these things, but like you can't simultaneously want to go on the show so bad and have a ton of leverage. Like these things don't compute. Like if it was like Deal or No Deal Island, Traitors for sure, but like that's not how. You know what I mean?
People are not robots, and frankly, few players are able to pull
Very.
off what was described. Everyone in the house trusting you more than they do anyone else
wonder if
would
Paul would
be
go on
absurdly
Traitors.
impressive to manage.
In terms of like
So
the
beyond
legends that they still need,
strategies can
they're
range
definitely one of them.
from creating a secret alliance between 2 people on
Zach's on
opposite
50, will
sides of the
Suri
house
target him?
so that they can have all the information and always work their separate sides to keep
Probably.
each other safe, to taking the risk in outwardly targeting a person so that should anybody else win HOH, they'll think, well, I don't need to target this person because we know who they want out and it isn't me. To being a perpetual pawn who's always nominated but never voted out because you aren't threatening. To actively floating between whatever alliances are convenient to you each week. To drawing a line in the sand between 2 alliances and hoping for the best. to pushing hard with game theory to explain what feel like more objective reasons for whoever's in power to target someone else. There's endless
Insane.
possibilities. So the game itself is strong, and all the wildly different people playing are what make it something that can be replayed over and over again and not get old. The core of Big Brother is honestly kind of perfect. And the people running the show clearly disagree. The first big hang-up and point of frustration with fans is that as the years have gone on, the show has clearly not had faith that the staple format of the game is interesting enough on its own to make the show worthwhile. So on many...
Like, the problem is Big Brother 10 had, like, the worst ratings in the show's history. So it's just not about making a good season for them. You know what I mean? That's the problem. And that, like, I agree with him and everything. It's just, like, that's the thing we got to get over. And this article about, like I think BB26 ratings were worse than BB25's. Now, I know it's a hot take for me that I like 25 more, but that's not the consensus. So it's just kind of...
seasons, they'll add in a twist or two that lasts for a few...
I'll tell you what, the Big Brother 25 10:30 p.m. episodes didn't do as well, I'll tell you that much.
...weeks to maybe even half the season, which the producers feel is something new to keep the season interesting and feeling fresh. But, we'll get to some examples in a bit, they almost always majorly hinder the game and thus the show. Like Big Brother has pretty much always had twists of some sort, even in the early seasons, but in the early days, they were all casting twists. We have stuff like BB4, where a handful of people were put into the game with their real-life exes. Or in BB5, there's Project DNA, where they actually had identical twins secretly tagging in and out of the house for the first half of the game, before both being able to join separately in the
Whoever
second half.
thought of
if they
that in
survived to
casting
that
is
point.
so funny.
They also somehow found half-siblings who had no idea that each other existed until they were talking in the house and pieced
They do look alike, no?
it together. Which is kind of fucked up for the show to orchestrate, but like, it's interesting. Ideally for me, I think the show should always be made up of complete strangers on an even playing field in that sense. But I see the intrigue to these sort of casting twists, and
Top 5 on its
especially as a
nights.
way to advertise the show.
It's probably still more than challenge.
Big Brother fumbled its chance to be a major
Damn.
hit, so it had to still work to gain new viewers after season 1 and have some sort of hook. People weren't going to be enticed just like, oh my god, they're finally using the number 5? So I get those, but less so with twists that adjust the actual game format, which just so happened to start coming up after Arnold Shapiro, who pretty much made the show what it was, left Big Brother after its first All-Star season, season 7. Looking at the years beyond that, we have twists where everybody is tied to a partner in the game, and if you want to nominate someone, you have to nominate them with their partner. A twist where the house is arbitrarily divided into teams, and if someone on your team wins HOH, then you're
Thanks,
safe
Martins.
too. Sometimes there's a twist or an extra
For 360
competition that lets
subs, pretty
someone
good.
name a third nominee, even if they aren't HOH. And it's become increasingly common for players who are already evicted to re-enter the game via a competition or twist or vote. Or most egregiously, there is a
Hashtag
thing
Victor is
called
back.
the Battle of the Block, where every week starts with 2 HOHs who each make separate pairs of nominations. And those pairs then compete in a different competition to
BB16 was the most successful season they've done in the past 15 years.
earn safety and
Like, you just gotta recalibrate your brain, you know?
dethrone the HOH who nominated them,
Like, we all
leaving the other
hated
HOH
Battle
and
of the Block,
noms
and they
as the
immediately
ones
brought it
who
back.
stick through the rest of the week with veto and eviction. Let's get into how terrible this is. Big Brother's format is made so that if a majority alliance cannot be torn apart by
I do
someone's
agree with
social
that.
maneuvering or natural
challenges were
distrust in the
on
group
BB
growing,
earlier,
there
holy
still
shit, they made some
remains
good
the
choices.
strong arm option of one person outside that alliance winning ahead of household competition and targeting that group. If there weren't cracks in the alliance before, there are now. But with a twist like this, there are so many hoops needed to jump through in order for somebody outside the power structure to even make a dent in that way. You would need to have yourself and a close ally win both HOHs for that week, then be willing to together nominate 4, potentially even 5 people if the veto is used, from the opposing alliance, which significantly limits the options you have for trust
I
you can
don't like
build
secret
and
rooms.
inroads you can
It's my
make
hot take.
into the group that
Get
you need
pizza
to
time in the
ensure someone
episodes.
goes home from, while also ensuring that they split apart in the aftermath rather than every single one of them being
We
united
get to
by the
watch stuff
fact that
happen
they
on
were
the feed
nominated.
down.
And even outside of that type of
But they would
scenario,
never.
the twist in
Need to be down
general
for, like, 2
pushes
days.
against targeting powerful players. Someone being nominated from the jump will have 3 separate chances to save themselves. The Battle of the Block competition, the Power of Veto competition, and then the eviction vote. If you want to not be the HOH that gets dethroned
kind of
that
embarrassing
week,
to get
then you
evicted on
specifically
BB16.
want to
It's like, how do you-
target
you have so many
players who are
chances.
weaker in the
Same with
competition
26.
aspect of the game.
At least pre-jury.
But then that also means that they're less likely to win the Power of Veto to remove themselves from the block and give you the option to renominate a bigger target in their place. It's a total rock and hard place position, and makes it so large alliances are likelier to stick together, especially if it's made up of the big strong guys who are more likely to be good at any given competition. Which, wow, shocker, that's exactly what happened. This was season 16, where they kept this twist going for 8 damn weeks, and made it so that basically the whole season was a straightforward, boring...
Bro, if I'm ever on BB, I'm gonna be the nerd referencing random BB moments in DRs. Just prepare for the backlash.
97-day-long steamroll.
That's all I can say.
But at least it ends there.
Coming up, I'll reveal a fan favorite twist to the house guests.
I don't know.
One of the
Who knows?
biggest and best game changers played out last summer. The Battle of the Block.
Fucking God. They just don't understand, or more likely, they just don't care. Because it's the same thing with a lot of these twists. A competition that allows a third nominee means that even if the majority alliance doesn't win HOH, as long as one of them wins the next competition and gets to pick that third nominee, they should be able to just vote out that person instead of who the HOH nominated. One person re-entering the game after being evicted practically
How about
every
2?
season just de-incentivizes
How about
players from
3?
taking a big swing because they fear that work will come undone. Having teams just limits the options and possible moves available for a player to make. Having everyone be in a pair does that even more so, especially if, as players thinking about the game would logically do, an alliance never includes 2 people from the same pair. That way, should any one of them be nominated, they can just vote out their partner who isn't in their alliance. Even the small twists that only last a
That shit was so fucked up in BB13, because like all the newbies benefited from aligning with people other than their partner, but all the vets obviously are tied to their partner because they're in a relationship. So like they stood no fucking chance.
week or 2, or just a single advantage that one player wins, Big Brother will still operate under Murphy's Law to an extent that is frankly worthy of applause. It's all poking holes in the natural strength of the format. Every time we see one of these twists sour an outsider's HOH win,
Said Olivia
or
Wilde.
lessen their chances
I feel
of
like
turning
Cassie
the opposing
is one of
alliance
the
against
most,
each other,
like,
it's that core
the
game
least
that was
discussed,
refined
most
for its
discussed
first few
house
years,
guest of all time.
desperately fighting against what I guess could hypothetically
Like,
be
she's
people
never
on
discussed, but I
production
feel like I hear
earnestly
about her
thinking
all the
that they're
time.
making the game more exciting with a fresh coat of bullshit that they slap on each season. But more
Ah,
likely,
finally a good question in the chat. Imagine BB25 without Jag or Cam returning and no returns at all. What do you think would have happened?
is just the result of network demands. It's just so apparent that in
Probably Suri or
CBS's
Jared
eyes,
win.
Big Brother is an easygoing, malleable filler show. Its biggest
Suri,
strength
Jared,
for
maybe
the network
Matt.
is just that it's
Maybe
cheap
I
to produce,
figure
it
something
fills in
out,
a lot of
probably
summer
not.
time slots, it lasts for several months, and has reliable viewership. Like when the '08 writer's strike
Trying to get
happened,
the chat moving,
CBS
Dad.
decided that, okay, let's just make 2 seasons of Big Brother this year. When the recent writer's strike happened, they said, okay, let's make this season longer and last 100 days, and then add this weird spin-off season for the winter. It's something that can bend however the network needs it so long as it keeps doing what it's doing. So that's a priority. Put the show on autopilot, just make sure you do X, Y, and Z each season, with one of those points clearly being that they have 2 or 3 new twists to forcefully inject interest, and also a chicken costume. Make sure there's a chicken costume somewhere. I feel like that's where Big Brother has solidly
some
been
respect in
since
reindeer
at
games.
least season
I didn't like it.
18 or 19. And it's currently on 26, by the way.
It was fine. It was just, it's just,
Big Brother production seems to operate under these sort of strict rules And that constrained feeling often extends to even more layers of the
That
show than you'd
tracks.
expect.
What do you mean?
There is an element of Big Brother that doesn't even want to be a reality show. It wants to have control.
Okay, Allie, what do you mean you're watching without audio? Explain this to me. What does this mean, this symbol that says watching without audio? How are you... Reindeer Games was fine. It's just not Big Brother, and I don't care as much about anything that's not Big Brother. Like, it was fun. It was fine. I don't want to be a hater. It was fine. It was a lot of comps, and it was very goofy. It was a really good cast, which saved it.
Over itself. It wants to have set, easy narratives that a consensus casual audience will enjoy.
This is
You
correct.
can see it in the casting, the diary
This is why
room
they
sessions,
love
and in these same
formats.
twists. Like, firstly, with casting, all reality shows pay attention to archetypes and formulas to some extent. If they notice that a particular personality type has made for good TV before, they're likely to want to recapture that. And in general, you need a variety of personalities, and often ones that will clash and create conflict. But there's still so much range to explore while accomplishing all that. And with Big Brother, most of that range gets ignored. It leans much more on casting archetypes and idealized storylines for them than the average competition show.
I don't think this is as true nowadays in more modern casting. I don't think this is as true. I feel like they've gotten pretty creative with their casting. I think the bigger criticism of Big Brother is they cast people who don't know the show at all. Which is like, that's fine, but you need to cast people who are invested in competing in the show. You know what I mean? Whether it's because they need the money, or because they really love the show, or because that's just their personality. I don't think it's like, oh, they need one surfer guy and one this person and one this person. There's obviously some, but like every reality show does that. Says the nerd of the season. I think I'm not like super unique when it comes to the nerd archetype, but I'm not the most archetypal.
I think.
And maybe that's more so just because of how I conducted myself in the house, of like getting into showmance and being kind of a bigger presence in that way.
Very directly, season after season, you'll see the young, superfan, nerdy guy who will always start off clumsy and awkward, but has a real shot if he can find his footing in the game. The fast-talking southerner who always seems happy and spews nonsense country phrases. The long-haired, surfer-type, friendly-seeming jock. The person who plans to keep secret their prestigious career in law or politics or something
That's
like
not
that,
even an
so
archetype.
the players underestimate them. The former undercover cop. The token gay guy is often a showman. The really gorgeous woman who's actually much smarter than people assume. All that
I
many
think
times over.
they've for the most part fixed the token gay guy casting, whatever that even means. Like, generally, the gay guy on the cast is one of the best people on the cast in general. Usually, there's also a correlation between being a fan as well.
And of course, when you look at the multiple examples within each archetype, they're all still people, so obviously they're not the same. I could go on with plenty of differences between Ian, Steve, Cameron, and Cory, you know? But the show probably
Look, I think these three are much more similar than the fourth.
prefers
I'm
that
sorry.
they practically be the same. People are put into the house less so with the experimental aspiration of, let's drop
You're
these
famous.
strangers in a pressure cooker for 3 months and see what happens.
Only 3 of them wear
and more
glasses.
so
Exactly.
having these specifically desired storylines,
How many of them fucked in the house? 0.
dynamics, and relationships. Or showmances, or what it's called when a couple forms in the house. So if archetypes were more or less the same, then great. They'll be getting what they already deemed as
I
reliable
haven't seen an
narratives.
Idgeball in a while.
And it's easier for the people working on the show week to week to know what to expect. They know
I think Red is one of those that's like, damn, this feels like old school casting. Like, how the fuck did... Not old school, but like middle school casting of like, this is just an archetype.
how to present this type of character to the audience, and there's less that they have to
Paramount
adapt
went back
to.
in their diversity initiative. I don't think so. Well, okay, they did, to be clear, but I think with, Jesse Tannenbaum started running the casting, like, just because there's not diversity initiatives doesn't mean they have to roll back their own mandates. Like, it's the same casting team at the end of the day. The only way is, like, I guess CBS does have the final word and everything, and they can do whatever they want. So
started. This competition is more slippery than a greased hog at the state fair.
And you can bet your bottom butter beans I'm gonna fight like hell to stay in this house this week.
This sort of spoon-fed unreality to the show is seen even more blatantly in the diary room sessions that players have. It's this show's version of the confessional, the talking head, where people speak their thoughts alone directly to the camera. In early seasons, this was very much a place for players to let
City, it's the same casting people. And like the CBS executives who have their voice heard and that kind of thing are basically the same.
their guard down, speak candidly, recap, and think through events that occurred recently in the house. But gradually, it's instead become where they have to put on their TV face for the producers. Like, just look at how people's posture in there changes over the years. Before, players would get comfortable, settle in, lean back, maybe even lay down sometimes as they speak. But soon, that casual nature disappears more and more. Now they're usually still sitting up straight.
Dan was not casual. Dan was awesome in the DR. Dan was not casual. Dan was like new era style delivery.
Still higher energy.
Ha! Gotcha.
They'll still have their TV personality turned up to 11. And often their volume.
I'm sorry. What did America have dialed up to 11 in the
their
DR?
TV personality turned up to 11. And often in their volume too. There's a lot of yelling in there. Just
don't
take
put
the
America
general
next to
vibe of
Quinn
DRs
with that
like
point.
this.
They're different.
I hoped it was Roddy, but Jason felt that he was protected because Roddy said he was not going to come after him.
Jay, you have my word on being
She's got a
straightforward with
few.
you.
Yeah, maybe a few.
If you brought someone in the room and said, you know what, I might nominate you, they're going to tell you anything or say anything to make sure that you don't do it.
And contrast it with something like this.
My man Jason busts through the doors and he's coming in hot. He's asking me all type of crazy questions and I'm just trying to defuse this guy, do a little bit of damage control so he doesn't go crazy like only the bull and win this veto. We gotta get him out this house, especially now that we have the chance.
One of them is clearly a lot.
It's a product of the era.
A lot more natural. As the show wants more
Josh
control
is
over itself,
very good in challenge confessionals, I think.
the diary room became where they could most easily do that. You know, it's where producers push the Southern archetype to say more of their wacky phrases, and in general make everyone give very direct, scripted lines that I say are scripted nowadays in the sense that when anything of substance is being said in there by a player, they are still explaining their honest perspective on the game. Nothing there is being made up whole cloth. It's just that they're explaining that in the way production wants them to. Like, it's most apparent when a player is recapping a specific conversation or event that occurred. In older seasons, people...
That was not scripted at all. I took no notes on that one. You think they came up with that? Do you think they could get to that level? Position their point, angle their statement. That was a fucking Cory original.
People would describe it all
It's
in
one of your least scripted ones. What do you mean, Katie? As opposed to what? My other more scripted ones? Mods ban her. Wait.
past tense. Because, fucking obviously, in order for them to be speaking about it now, it had to have happened in the past. But nowadays, the diary room sessions are often spoken as if this is happening in real time. As
Yeah,
if
it's
it's their internal thoughts in the moment, rather than their thoughts after the fact.
This is an
How do you feel
interesting
about it,
idea.
Steve?
I never thought about it like this.
Generally not good about pawns.
Vanessa, I don't understand what your problem is. Pawns go home in this game. I don't want to do this for you. Please stop putting me in this position.
Right. Okay.
Which, in theory, intercutting those DRs with the scene of that event happening could make sense, but ultimately, the simple fact that this isn't how people speak makes it so distracting to me. If people are recapping something, just let them do it how they would if they were actually speaking to
Yeah,
another person, rather.
This is like when I have a conversation with Jared, and like, instead of showing the interaction between me and Jared, it's me explaining the interaction with like 5 shots of me and Jared going back and forth. It's like it's like Love Island, like show the actual conversation and then the DR supplement those conversations.
Rather than pretending they're reliving that moment. When you force the latter, you're kind of requiring these people to do
That's a
some
great
acting. And They're on Big Brother. They're not actors. Don't make them do reenactments. Don't force retakes. Don't make them do...
Uh-huh. It's my birthday. It's my birthday. Oh, yeah.
This woman is an amazing player. A dominant strategic force who played in such a frantic yet calculated way, unlike anyone we've seen before or since. Yet you make her do this. And for what?
Doesn't seem supernatural to Vanessa,
With a solid
to be honest.
80% of each cast, you're going to get a loud but still bland, unconvincing, monotone delivery of lines, some of which are
Riley's been the
nauseatingly
DR.
copy and pasted.
So I walk into the backyard.
Walk out into the backyard.
I walk out in the backyard. I walk into the yard.
So I walk into the backyard.
I walk in the backyard.
Best thing for me right now is to secure my safe.
I'll tell you what, I was actually pretty happy when they had me do. So I walk into the backyard. It was the alien one. I was like, oh, this is fun. I get to do one of these.
So I really want to win this to secure my own safety.
I need to secure my safety.
The only...
So, in fairness, like, this is not them telling you to say this. This is just you watching Big Brother. It's like just terminology. It's like chopping block. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like how you would say it on Big Brother. Like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, he's right, but I think it's not so much like...
Anyway, I can ensure my own safety.
As a BB superfan,
As a Big Brother superfan. As a BB superfan.
Is there a
And
Cory
when
one
watching
here?
the show,
Oh, thank
that
God.
leaves us to scrounge for...
I got frustrated with that. That was something they wanted a lot. That pissed me off. Because I was even like, can I just do it a different way? Can I be like, I love the show so much and it means a lot to me as a BB superfan? It's like, bro.
And savor the rare moments where someone's emotions are expressed unfiltered and bleed through the edit. Whether it's an emotional
What happens
outburst
if you
that's
say
too
no?
compelling to not air,
What?
It's fine. Like, I said no to 80% of the things. I just think a lot of people don't. You run the risk of being on the show less, though, because they'll get someone else to say what, you know, they wanted you to say.
Isn't he not gonna win? Give him the money. I'm wasting my time right now.
or even little
could be the
things
best
like,
confessional
I
in
always
Big Brother
remembered
history.
this tiny moment with this person, Paul, who was very good in the DR. They would have a lot of fun with it. But we see a point where, after they tell their joke, at the end of the DR performance, if you will, there's a brief pause, and then we see Paul smirk. Just that. The sign that I really like my own joke. I think I'm hilarious. I'm enjoying myself here. That is much more funny and endearing than whatever the joke itself was. But we don't get stuff like that often. And
Ain't
for the
nobody
most
touching
part,
Brittany Haynes
it's
in the
another
DR.
piece of the
Oh,
show
Brittany's
put on rails.
the GOAT,
And don't get
but
me wrong, exaggerating and playing
Zach
stuff up
DR,
a bit
I
for the
think, might
show
be the
isn't
peak.
inherently bad. There are people who have the character and
Kirsten's
charisma
so
to pull
cool.
it off. Like several of my favorite players surely weren't coming up with everything off the cuff. And some of my favorite moments are ones where it obviously wouldn't happen this way if people weren't aware that there's cameras. But you don't want it like that all the time, and not everyone there can succeed with it. In fact, a major point of interest with the whole concept of the show is that every facade a person puts up will inevitably drop at some point in the 80 or whatever days that these live feeds are constantly filming them.
True.
So they'll show their true colors. They always do. So work with that. Work with the reality of your reality show. And with the idea of a reality competition show wanting things to play out in certain ways, the elephant in the room is the possibility of producers rigging the game to engineer those outcomes. Often when fans aren't happy with results, they'll cry out that this particular competition was only used this week to save this player, or that they added this twist last minute to help
Yeah,
so-and-so,
it's just not
or that they're
really
giving information
true
to a
here.
person in the diary room.
There's
or
some moments
whatever.
that you're like, this
And I'll
feels
start by
weird.
saying that Big Brother isn't fair. In fact, it's generally terribly unfair. It's not chess, it's a TV show. However, I do think there are boundaries to what the people behind the show are willing to manipulate, and that very direct type of interference
The problem with showing the realness of people is that this fandom cannot tell the difference between friend and foe. I don't know what the fuck that means, Cody.
is both outside those boundaries and also just logistically
I like the
difficult
energy.
to imagine. Competitions require a lot of pre-planning and setup, so changing them
Makes you
and
think.
swapping stuff around as they please wouldn't be super easy, especially nowadays with the larger sets. I mean,
love
this
that
is the
comp.
production team that used an audio-based
This is not a good
competition
comp.
when a deaf guy was competing. You'd think they'd change that on the fly if they could.
Then released an article about how they're so accessible.
As for giving information
Wow!
to certain players, I will say that players often try and sometimes can successfully glean information from the types of questions they're asked or not asked in the
Get on
DR
it,
if
BTP.
production is too sloppy. Like if you're in an alliance and they're never gonna
Also, BT Pisstheg, you're gonna have to write in chat what you want me to call you. It's always like a huge obstacle for me when your name pops up.
being asked about that alliance in the DR, it probably means that the alliance is either fake or much less important to the direction of the game than you thought it was. It doesn't happen often, it's not a particularly reliable way for players to gain information, but it can happen, and I think reading into stuff like that all kinda just becomes another part of the game.
Piss for
Now,
sure.
as far
it's
as
pretty good.
directly telling players information in private, no, I absolutely don't think that happens. There's definitely
Yes.
room for nudging
Yes,
people in a
you.
direction, for
Piss.
asking them more questions about a
What's
potential
the-
move to
what
get
should I
them
call
thinking
it?
about it
The
more and
G?
considering it more. And of course, there's human
BTP
error at
is the
play
G.
with how well each worker on production is at making sure
Yeah.
everything they say to players is as impartial as possible. But generally speaking, anything more overt than that, like anything that production actively has to go out of their way to do, I legitimately
or
don't
G.
think so. With
My name's
26
Blake, I'm not gonna
seasons
remember
of
that.
episodes,
I will remember, I'm just not gonna
live
call you that 'cause it's
feeds,
weird.
postseason interviews, and
I'll do
NDAs
BTP.
expiring, enough damning, convincing evidence of malicious rigging would have come out by now. And for the people
The show is so not rigged, it's stupid. I think the thing is, like, I think a lot of people can look on their DRs retrospectively and then be like, were they trying to do this? And that answer might be yes. But, like, I don't know, everything is vulnerable to human error, and the people in the DR are human. I think that's kind of as deep as it goes.
running the show, the minute
BT piss
reward
tag?
of
Yeah, that's pretty
rigging
good.
is not worth whatever risk there is to that anyways. It's argued how
Matt
much
having
Big
the most
Brother
inequitable comp of the season is so messed up. I think Matt had a better chance of winning that than, like, Felicia winning half the comps.
falls under the
I hear you, but, like ultimately, if you're saying Matt had 0% chance to win that, there's a lot of other comps that other people had 0% chance to win.
umbrella of
Like a
game
ton of
show,
most
and is
of
thus bound by the strict laws against rigging game shows that have been in place
Heisem
for
did
decades.
do
But
that
even
so
if it
fast,
doesn't,
though.
it would
Low-key, the
still
most
do
impressive
damage to
performance
the
of the
show's
season.
credibility and
was
reputation.
Heisem in that veto.
I've been talking about many decisions likely being guided by executives just wanting Big Brother to stay afloat as an old reliable. And a controversy that isn't about the players, but the game itself, would put that at risk. And all
believe
just
they
for the
did
ever
that
so
with
minor
Jack.
boost of the audience favorite winning the game instead of
I
being
feel like in
voted
BB 26, 27, he'd, like, win AFP.
out in like 6th place or whatever. That doesn't do much for them. Letting everything ride its course still does the job, so why bother putting in more work here? Furthermore, if they did rig that directly, if they did
that
care
show
that
winning.
much to do so, there are so many instances where it would make plenty of sense to engineer a certain outcome, and yet it doesn't happen. If you think production is like that, then shouldn't you also look back and think, wait, why didn't they rig here? 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 A lot of winners are not exactly beloved. There are some impressively dull seasons that you'd think they'd want to inject some interest in. And there are twists that the show put a lot of hope.
I will say, I also don't think production understands the strategy of the game at all. I'm sure some, specific members do, but I think a lot of times they throw in twists with the hope that they're going to help the minority, and they never do, because that's not how the twists are inherently designed. Like, the invisible HOH, I really think was meant to shake up the house. And I guess they might view it as a success. But again, like, let's play it out if I win that. They throw in all these twists to try to make someone make a big move, and it almost stopped every big move from being made.
Hopes in, only for it to not work in the slightest. Like in season
There we
12,
go. Oh, shit.
the host, Julie Chen, had to hype up this twist called the Saboteur. The Saboteur was a player in the house who was secretly put in just to cause chaos and keep the players on edge all season long, She'll rat out people's games.
I was
She'll
so
cast
high on
suspicion
Angela.
onto the other players. When the lights go out, you gotta
was
be
my number
careful
3.
because there's never a dull moment with the saboteur. Oh, she was the first person evicted. Oh. Shit.
That was so funny.
Failing like that is just what Big Brother production does. So I don't know how people see the show fall on its face time after time and yet think that the producers are masterminds who can manipulate everything constantly and get away with it. There's only one notable instance coming to mind that didn't have extenuating circumstances behind it revealed post-season, and this
Battlebacks are like nicotine. Like it feels really good, but everyone knows it's bad deep down.
case is very,
You know what I mean?
very eyebrow-raising, and if there's a major exception in my mind, it's definitely that.
It's like you
But
want
overall,
the Battleback to
oh
get
wait,
your
and
person
Helen was
back,
pushed.
but
overall,
ultimately, you know, it's
there
gonna
is
hurt
a
the season.
line that confines what they control, and what I think is within that boundary that the producers are willing to manipulate in is not Big Brother exerting control over the game week to week as it's happening. It's in how it sets up the game board before the players even start playing on it. The clearest examples of what I mean are the few specific seasons where among a cast of newbies, there is
Ooh.
a single returning player.
read my
or
article.
A pseudo-returning player in
Returning
Sari Fields,
player
who was
privilege.
well known from playing Survivor 4 times. And in those cases, that person is the immediately recognizable face of the season. And the show is thus invested in that player sticking around. Not necessarily winning, but sticking around. Paul, who I mentioned earlier, was one of those people. They returned in season 19 after having played and been really popular in the prior season, and was obviously set up for success. But the show cannot force them to be immune, or that'd be too transparently bullshit. What they do instead is offer the illusion of choice that funnels the game
The
into
illusion
a
of choice
direction
is
where they'll
one
be
of the biggest
present for
things. I
at
hate
least
it.
a few weeks. In this
The public
case,
voting.
firstly, releasing Paul into the house via a twist, where basically they tell the house guests, if anyone dares to push their button, that person will get a bunch of money, but something crazy will enter the house. It's all vague enough, and with a large enough amount of money, $25,000 I believe, that of course someone would push the button, but it's still technically a choice. So people can say, if you didn't want to compete against an experienced player, then everyone should have just not pushed their button.
What about the final 3 comp where Chelsea setup was much easier than Mackenzie's and Cam's? Why are they rigging part 1 of the final 3 for Chelsea? Like, it was, again, they're not good at this sometimes. Like, the wall is the most obvious example. Like, they're really bad at making it fair. But, like, Chelsea winning part 1 is so meaningless.
From there, Paul enters the house filled with people who were already fans of theirs, of course. And the next stage of the twist is that Paul is able to give immunity to half the house. Hypothetically, that's something Paul could misplay by angering those they leave out. Maybe. Somehow. If you squint. But not really, you really just easily earn the trust and loyalty of 8 people. And it doesn't end there either. In the first week, there was an advantage that the audience would vote to give
crazy.
to any one of the players. This advantage gives you complete immunity for the first few weeks of the game. And again, hypothetically, anybody can win this vote. It's in the audience's hands, not production's. But when you think about it for a millisecond, who is the audience going to vote for? One of these people who they just met this week
They
and
did this
probably
on
still
TV
don't know from a hole in the
13.
wall? Or someone who they had just watched for an entire summer and came into the season TV ready? Yeah, it's all done at the starting line, when the producers know where all the pieces will be to ensure that there's a comfortable landing spot for a Paul, or a Sari, or this guy. His name's Jesse. Say hi, Jesse.
Hey, how you doing?
But after that initial setup, I think it's hands off. Producers care about that person making a decent run so that this reliable character and storyline is there for at least a few weeks. But with the endgame results, the winner of the season, they don't care as much about that as the results of all their respective seasons show. The furthest they've gone with engineering a specific season is, again, with a twist that was there from the very beginning of that season. In Big Brother 8, there was this guy, Eric Stein, who was cast under the
I think Big
condition
Brother 8
he isn't just
often
playing.
doesn't get the criticism that it was rigged in the same way other seasons do, because it was just like an unfair twist. But like, it was probably the most riggable because they could. I forget how consistent it was what America could vote on.
To win the game. He's playing as this twist called America's Player, where every week he's given tasks voted for by the audience that he has to complete to earn money. Some of them were fluff, like getting a weird phrase to catch on in the house. But more importantly, he'd always get a task on who to get nominated this week and who to get evicted from the house. And this, while being votes in the audience's hands, really keeps the season in production's control because most of the audience just watches the edited show and not the unedited live feeds. So when choosing who Eric has to target and protect, it can be dependent on who's getting a good or bad edit on the show. So I'd say that one is even more unfair than what I laid out earlier, given Eric was an amazing player who would accomplish most of these tasks and make it far in the game despite essentially playing with one hand tied behind his back. And it had to have been known that he was capable of that. That's why he was chosen for that role. But the thing is, we can still see all of that. Nothing is hidden. Nothing's behind the scenes from us. I bring it up because it shows that if Big Brother wants to have continuous influence on the game, there are loopholes to do so out in the open in a way that's still in that zone, where it's technically something that was set up from before the season started. And the game mechanics were never changed mid-season. And the votes were decided by the audience, a third party. So you can squint and argue that it's fair. So when something like America's Player is an option, risking malicious behind-the-scenes game manipulation isn't even really needed to accomplish what they want.
The answer is will, actually.
Like, they actually went on to sort of repeat this twist, where 3 people were on Team America and were given tasks to complete, but unlike with Eric, 95% of these tasks were just wacky fluff content rather than game-related goals. The show could have easily had control of the game in a similar way, yet chose not to. So overall, most twists or competitions or whatever that people cry wolf about, I think were there from the start. And once the game gets going, it's hands-off, barring how the edit...
I 100 gajillion bajillion % agree with this. I think sometimes there's contingencies, to be fair. Like, I don't know if Path to Power would have happened if not for, Luke being ejected, but I do think it probably would have. Maybe.
It can affect fan votes or when they have to adjust on the fly due to unforeseen circumstances, like a player quitting. And here I am defending the game, but it's not...
I gotta stop pausing, because everything I say, he says 1 minute after. 30 seconds after.
Like, what I'm saying is a glowing endorsement of Big Brother's credibility. There's plenty of bullshit that's worth criticizing, and I'm not saying that there's absolutely zero chance I'm wrong. I just think that there is an interesting line that they're willing to walk up
God, what a cool comp
and
this
that
was.
line is not nearly as far as people tend to believe it is. Because the priorities are way more about ensuring lasting storylines and knowing how to present those characters to an audience rather than specific end results. It's 3 episodes a week.
Sorry,
they want rather
I
than
didn't catch this. I don't really think about it. I think even America's Player fits in this category. They like that it influences the game in the direction the fans want, but I think just having the storyline of America's Player in the season was actually more a priority than the stories of the players who Eric...
Specific end results. It's 3 episodes a week.
I mean, I think it's
they
probably
want to
just
know
both.
they have stuff to fill that time with
What
each
season event
It's
slash
all
comp
about
do you
filling a
think
time slot.
totally overrated?
And I wish that weren't the case. It doesn't need to
A
set
lot of
up these
questions there.
guardrails because the
I think
game
26
happening
is
in real
overrated.
time, week to week,
And
is,
I think,
again, a core part of what
I
keeps Big Brother endlessly
I
interesting.
think comics is pretty terrible. People get hyped for
On
comics.
that topic,
It's a terrible
episodes
comp
are
and
being
terrible. All
edited and
comics are
airing
terrible.
as the game is still occurring. Generally, at most, the events of an episode end off
think BB2
2
is also
days or
overrated.
so prior to when the episode is airing. Wildly different from something like Survivor, where episodes begin airing months after the winner has been decided. With that, editors
Hide and Go
can
video,
know
I still
how everyone's journey
still think
goes
it's
from
good. I
beginning
think
to
OTEV
end,
is-
and how to best
it's just a very
represent
physical
those
comp, but at
as
least it's
one
fun to
long-form
watch.
story. They know which alliances
Comics
and
is a
relationships end
1x1
up as
comp,
most
and I hate
important.
1x1
They can
comps.
foreshadow
Oh, I hate 'em.
things. They can set a person up as a villain from the very start, knowing that later on in the game, that person will have a big downfall and it'll be all the more satisfying. In Big Brother, though,
And the slippery
editors
one,
can
you're so
only
annoying.
estimate what information will be most crucial to air. Like, sometimes a person wins HOH, and there's someone who hasn't been a focus on the episodes whatsoever prior to now. So they gotta play catch up on what this person's deal is.
Oh,
Who do they
God.
trust? Who do they dislike? etc.
I hate this shit.
And with how they present players individually, as heroes, villains, and such,
so
a lot of the time it's played safe because, hypothetically, any of them could be the winner of the season, and thus should be a palatable character that people will at
It is
least
harder
be able
for
to
Big Brother than
stomach
Survivor, to
seeing
be
win.
fair.
So regardless of how terrible someone is being in the house, they will often only start getting buried on the edited show once their position in the game has plummeted and they truly seem like they're on their way
They definitely thought I was winning the season for 2 weeks there.
out the door.
I think
Because
they
of all
definitely
that,
started
even though
investing in
it's
the Cory
3
basket.
episodes a week, there's a lot
I'll tell you
that
what, they
goes into
never really invested in the Matt basket. They really thought it was Jag. And I think it's maybe just because they couldn't get anything out of Matt, but like there was a minute there where they thought I was gonna win, and then they went all in on Jag.
if that's
I think
all
he was
you're
just the
watching.
best narrator
Which
of the
brings
Mafia,
us
but
to what makes Big Brother Big Brother. And that's the live feeds. Having these is like watching a completely different show. It's not truly 24/7 footage, as cameras go down for competitions, nominations, if a house guest is singing copyrighted music, stuff like that. But it's so much that we essentially do see the full story as its reality, rather than edited episodes with inevitably
Jag made
missing
all their
pieces.
decisions.
We get what everyone's
If Jag made all
relationships
their
are,
decisions,
what each person says they're planning, how these differ when they're
they would
talking
not
to
be in as
person
good shape.
A versus person B, which piece of information caused so-and-so to change their tune on a decision, just how terrible of a player is Jim Bob Jones really. We get to analyze everything while still having the wonder of what will actually happen next and how will it unfold. Like, to go back to Survivor, there's obviously strategic game interest and
it
votes
is
where
true.
fans will debate
Jag wanted to
whether
fucking keep Cameron. You know what I mean? Jag wanted to keep Cameron. Jag, without Matt's influence, might even fucking keep me at the final 8, which would have been insane. At the Matt took out Suri. Oh, God, you guys are so stupid. My viewers are so dumb. Guys in chat, viewers are so dumb. Oh. Yeah, Jag had the veto. He had all the votes. That was not the duo making a decision. Matt had no choice. Matt nominated Suri and Felicia, and Jag won the veto. It was over. Jag was not the one pushing Cam. That was mostly Matt. Jag wanted to roll with it.
so-and-so made the right move or not, and that's all well and good, but there are some limitations to that aspect of shows like that in comparison to Big Brother, because first, there's obviously less overall context, but also there's a meta layer to the show that you can view it through. Due to episodes being put together while knowing the end results, scenes are selected and included with much
Matt putting up anyone but Suri would have been the stupidest shit ever. Like, Matt had to put up Suri and Felicia. Because you can't do anything else. Like, why would you?
more purpose, as you would with any sort of scripted storytelling. So when you're watching with the awareness of that, you're able to see the writing on the walls in some places. Like I mentioned how they can more confidently have a villainous character knowing that their downfall
And
will
it's
come
not like
at,
Matt was running
say,
it. I don't want to
Final
give
Eight.
Matt that much credit.
For
Like,
a viewer,
it was just like between the
after
two
an
of them,
episode or two of
there
that
really
person
wasn't
being
like an
shown in a
alpha big dog.
consistently
Matt
negative
was
light,
better at
you too
maneuvering and
can safely
navigating,
assume
and
that,
Jag
okay, that guy's definitely not
understood
winning.
how to own
He's
his
getting
game. That
humbled
was kind
at
of
some
it.
point. Or if there's somebody who's been pretty invisible for a majority of the season, you won't have expectations
I don't think either of
them
them were running
suddenly
anything
taking
really.
control
Like,
of the
they're
game
just kinda-
and potentially winning. Like, you don't expect an extra to come on screen suddenly and be the one to uncover that Walter White is Heisenberg, you know? It's just how storytelling works. And specifically, with predicting the winner, there's a thing called edgic, simply a portmanteau of edit and logic, where by picking apart what they've chosen to show us, people narrow down which of these people is reasonably being set up as the winner. Generally speaking, that'll be someone who's shown...
Did you guys watch the season? Matt was moldable to everyone's opinion. That was his game. Like that's why he was good, and that's why it's hard to tell if he was actually good or if he was just agreeable. Like, Matt would just agree to everyone's face. That was his game. But Jag had every single competition win. Like, he was the decision maker because of that. That was it. Like, stop. Matt was the better player. Jag was the better competitor. And it was, like, kind of that simple. Like, so Jag ultimately got to make most of the decisions because he was the person in power.
in a largely positive light, has clearly well-established relationships and dynamics with a few other key characters.
Yeah, Jag did do
in
the...
some ways
At
ties
Final
into
10,
the main
that was
themes of the
on Jag.
season,
I'll give him that.
and whose perspective we usually don't go too long without hearing from, regardless of how necessary their commentary is to the specific events of the episode. And once you have a handle on those sort of things, it's pretty reliable. In some cases, people have the winner clocked by the first 2 episodes, or even just the premiere. And the overall accuracy rate of each season's
When I
consensus
saw Tommy on the
prediction
challenge, I was like, what
really
the
dwarfs
fuck?
the few cases where it was a surprise to the very end. In Big Brother, you don't have that. A person who you had forgotten was on the show can win.
Who are the most unexpected winners in Big Brother from the edit? I guess Andy's definitely up there. Steve had a decent edit, but he's pretty up there. Josh, like, I guess was surprising because it was just all Paul, but Josh had a huge edit. Yeah, I feel like they nail most of them.
Someone
Even
who you
Jordan
hate,
had a ton.
Better
'cause
get
Jeff
used
and
to them
Jordan.
winning.
Casey
No
had a ton.
fate is fully written until you see the event with your own eyes.
I
So
think
when
the only
you
people
look
who really
over
came
the
out of nowhere
strategic
to win were
landscape
like
of the
Andy.
house, you're forced to
Steve.
consider the full potential of each piece that's on the board. That's something that can be really damn
Casey, a little bit,
complicated. And that's great.
Sorry, I gotta check this out.
Be really damn
Okay, I'm
that's on
sorry.
the board. That's something that can be really
There's nothing going on here, right? Okay, this is the day 4 alliance map. I was like, what the fuck is this? This is Dalfika? What is this?
damn complicated.
Okay, let's see what we got. 7 Deadly Sins. What's this? Just like... Yeah, what is this meant to be? Just like a group of people? Surrey's Daycare? We need the alliance chart people to be less biased. Like, what the fuck is this? Why is Cameron here? We got the 3-way rats? Legend 25 fake? The implication being the rest of them are real? What the fuck? What do you mean? Legend 25, they had to like give the distinction that it was fake, as opposed to Family Style, which Cameron is out of, by the way. I don't know where Cameron went. You got Cam, Red, and Matt. This is real, apparently. They didn't even name the crossroads. This is fucked up. Or maybe it's somewhere else. No, they just put it here.
And that's great. Trying to dissect the countless different paths that a season could go down from any given moment, it's
The
such
make
an
it-
addictive...
No fucking way they put the make it happen. Do you guys even remember that conversation? That was like this is basically Legend 25, but before then they changed it before this happened. The Make It Happen Alliance. It was when me and Jared were like pulled into their room during Heisem's eviction week. And we're just like talking to Felicia and Bowie, and they were trying to make this thing, like pulled me and Jared in officially or whatever. And then they're like, oh, we're going to pull in Cam and Red later. It's going to be an 8-person alliance. I'm like, okay, this is good. And then they basically just did that anyways with the Legend 25, and I was out of it. The Make It Happen alliance.
brain exercise that, near its peak, there is no show I would rather experience. And even in cases where the strategic game of a season isn't being super active and so there's less to pick apart and anticipate,
I never thought I would hear that
the
again.
live feeds are also where Big Brother
That was
strongly
maybe dropped
illustrates
in the
this
house one
environment
time.
as a microcosm of society. A lot of these shows pitch themselves as that, and
Oh.
it usually fits to some degree, as this group of people are all trapped in their own little world
Thought that was
while
the genius,
trying
like Devil's
to
Plan.
each succeed over the other in whatever way they can and earn the most money. But Big Brother, I've always felt, was the strongest example that you can observe, because we get to see the warts and all of what comes with that. since the people are in here for so long and will never be able to keep up the facade of how they want to present themselves every single day.
I have come here to study human beings.
So social dynamics get very cleanly represented here as we add to the third
with
party
Junseok.
viewing all their interactions and the inconsistencies that come with that. Often, I think it ends up as a clear display of a lot of the social conflicts within America, as you notice some trends that reoccur in many seasons, even though on paper, all of these strangers are entering the house starting on the same level. Most simply, just looking at the results and cast demographics, you can notice a few things. Like, there's surely something to be said about the gender imbalance among winners of the game. It leans quite heavily towards men. They more often get to the end,
In
more
recent
often
years, is
are
that
awarded the
true?
win by a jury over a woman. Just a lot of little stats like that.
There was just
pointing
that
towards there
stretch
being
of
an
like 6
advantage
seasons
in
in a
one
row
direction.
that got really bad.
And then when you look at the very start of seasons,
like,
there are the many instances
14,
of the cast
15,
being predominantly
16,
white,
17,
and people of color tending to disproportionately be
18,
targeted
19,
early, and not as often make their way into the main alliance, the in-crowd of the house. Like, there's one particular season where Julie was interviewing all the first 3 people evicted from the game, and the image is, very striking. In general, it's clear that if you're in any way visibly and obviously different from the majority of the house, whether that be through race, age, sexuality, whatever, you'll have a tougher time succeeding.
BB16 too,
It was noticeable
BB17,
through a lot of
like-
stretches of Survivor as well. People gravitate towards those who seem similar to them. I wouldn't think that's controversial to say. So in this
liberal
game,
team,
it adds a layer of difficulty
10
that
conservative.
might not be astronomical per se. Plenty of people make it over that hurdle, whether through skill
That
or
I
luck.
think that is the biggest setup in Survivor history. Jeffra, LJ, Jeremiah, Alexis, Morgan, and Bryce.
But
It's gotta be
it's
the
a
biggest setup
hurdle
in reality
that
TV
most
history.
people in the house don't have to deal with. Those are both points that you could hypothetically notice at a glance. And then when you're watching more and seeing it more closely, further layers show up. Like related to the gender dynamics of the game, I've always found it interesting how the dudes in the house so often come together in the line, while groups of women rarely do the same. Jock's broing down was kind of the stereotypical start to a Big Brother season. The guys quickly consolidating power for themselves, almost instinctively. Yet despite that, it often seems like the thing that puts more fear in people is the mere whisper or possibility of a women's alliance. Again,
Yeah, comps are the main reason for this, right?
no women's alliance has ever really stuck. But just the idea of women consolidating power is still an effective boogeyman to use in the game. And expanding on the second point,
With the
I'd
Spy
just like to
Girls,
go into
it's
more
true.
detail on an example of people revealing their own biases within the game. Because sometimes, yeah, someone who's different
what
from the
example we picking?
majority of young, white, hot people goes home early, and it was mostly because they were a bad player. It isn't always due to biases or whatever. But they do exist, even in recent seasons where the cast demographics are much more balanced. I think Big Brother, with constant cameras on everyone, ends up making that very clear. So there are a few things you can
So
go into.
BB25 was kind of tough. It was Kirsten, Jared, Felicia, and me on the block. You know, that's a tough spot. It was...
This happened, how this alliance came to be. That time the first HOH decided,
Yeah.
basically due to what I've already been talking about, that he 100% won't be nominating any people of color or women during his first HOH reign. Of his own accord, he was insistent that this be the case, no matter
was
what.
fire.
100%.
This was insane.
And guess who he nominated to start? But a very
Right after
recent
Tyler
case
in
is when there
22.
was this woman, Taylor, who was very kind, very understanding, but she was being targeted the first week, and people's perception of her never seemed to match reality. Everything she
fuck did
did
she win
was
this?
viewed
It's
through a
crazy.
malicious lens. Like, those targeting her had this assumption that when Taylor realizes she's in danger, she'll get angry and flip out and yell and all that. She's cocky, angry, rude, etc. We know from the feeds that it was all pulled out of thin air. Like, none of it seemed to be purposeful lies, but none stemmed from actual evidence. In fact, they had the opposite evidence, since during that time she's still plenty nice as she interacts with them day to day. And after she does indeed learn that she's being targeted, she's still really nice. There's no anger, it was mostly just sadness and remorse. But that narrative of her personality ran strongly through the rest of the house and was adopted by almost all the other players. I sure wonder if there's anything about Taylor that would make people so quick to view her as a rude, angry, fiery person. More on her later. Enough cases like...
So I wasn't like watching as actively as I am now, obviously at this point, but I'm on Twitter all the time. Those Terrence and Monty conversations. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Like that add up, where if it were outside the self-contained box of the game, you would probably fill in the gaps of logic yourself and assume there's some level of valid reasoning to it that we just didn't
There's
see.
a lot of bad, but those
with
ones
all
stuck out
these
to me, I'm
cameras
like,
and the countless conversations you witness, there's little to doubt. Preconceived notions and biases are attached to all sorts of people, some much more than others.
Hence why hooking up with
and they
Monty
can
was
build
so
out
traumatizing
to have
for
a
the
large
audience.
impact, inside and outside this box.
I think the Danielle
Visible
crush was more
parallels
devastating.
go on and on. Even what I talked about earlier, where some people enter the game and are basically handed these huge advantages over the other players. Or really any instance of returning players being in the same season as newbies. It mirrors the real world. They're just like those who were born on third base from their rich parents or something. And in this competitive capitalist market where you're trying to outperform others and end up in positions to earn more money, they obviously have a much easier time doing so. But they themselves, and sometimes even those watching it, are resistant to admit the effect that those advantages had and would much rather maintain this inflated sense of self, insisting that everything is fair and balanced, and they just naturally are way better than these other people. Or how anger and hatred and othering the outsiders is such a dangerously powerful tool to control alliances. As when people are only focused on punishing others and pushing the enemy of the hour lower than themselves, it lets them feel big even though they aren't. It keeps them from looking
It's hard
up
to find,
and
like
logically examining.
this video is 2.5 hours, and they're jump cutting every 5 seconds, or like 3 seconds. The amount of work that went into this video is insane.
The full picture and thinking, who's truly in control, and how will the overall situation affect me later on? They just assume, well, obviously this sort of treatment will never find its way to me.
I think he's the worst casting decision in Big Brother history. I feel confident. Because everyone, there's so many horrible people, but I could see the vision with some other people. Daniel Durson, horrible dude. But at least he had a weird-ass job. You know what I mean? He had a weird-ass job, and he was a super fan. It's like, okay, maybe I could see how we got here. A fellow Terp is so upsetting. Literally, yeah, my parents are Terrapins, both of them. What the fuck was the vision here?
I'm one of the good ones.
Because sometimes it's even like, okay, this person sucks, but they're hot. And Nick is like he's like a fine-looking dude. He's fine, you know?
It's cruel, but as history and today shows, it keeps working.
Like, we know why Jack was cast.
You've seen it happen here. Don't look up, look down. The reason why your financial situation is not as healthy as you would like it to be is because of the people that mow your lawn and deliver your food. It's not because of the people who run the country, or the people that own Twitter, or the people that own Amazon. It's because of him over there, delivering your tacos.
And that's all Big Brother showing sucky aspects of the world, but not to say that all of what I just talked about is present in every individual season, or that they strictly reflect negative aspects. So firstly, I would say that if this sort of stuff is going to happen, it's good that
When/if you ever play Big Brother again, do not talk about your advantage as a returning player. Yeah, that is something I would do.
It's visible.
If I was all against newbies. I mean, look, I know you're probably thinking that usually the returning player wins, but this actually isn't the case this time.
Objectively through the live feeds, and the fact that it's all contained within the box that is this game, where theoretically people should be entering it on an even playing field, yet you often notice these sort of trends happening. There are less ways to excuse it than when you see it in the real world. So perhaps it helps you realize that a lot of those excuses that you use in the real world are actually just that, excuses. Like, I think watching Big Brother has legitimately given me a clearer perspective on some issues, and I'm sure others have had similar experiences.
Live strategy corners in the house to captivate an audience of recruits.
Long enough now that it can
I'm gonna be honest, it would be my nightmare to be cast on a season where I was like the sole returning player, because I know the statistics, and I'd feel so much pressure. I'd walk in there being like, I'm supposed to win. Like, if I don't get to the end, this is an utter failure.
Act as an effective time capsule that you can easily
And Jesse's the
compare
only
to
one, and
newer
even then,
seasons
that's
and see the
very
positive
circumstantial.
societal changes that have occurred since then with how differently certain things are portrayed. In addition, it can often capture a time and place when America is in the middle of going through a change.
My favorite
and
tweet in
particularly
Big Brother
when
history,
Big Brother is
Lisa
doing its
B.
job of actually
Say what you will
casting
about
a bunch
Pauly,
of
but
people
he
from
loves
different
Zakia.
walks of life instead of the 16 actors from California. It can display the positive qualities of America as this mishmash of so many different cultures and lifestyles. Like, I wasn't watching the show yet at the time of season 6, but I'd have to think it was very notable that in that season, which was in 2005, in the grand scheme of things still not that far removed from 9/11, the show had its first Muslim contestant with Kaysar, and he became one of the most beloved players of all time. He was cerebral, fearless, kind, and unifying. You always hear about people being in complete shambles when he was voted out. Or when he was voted out again. We're not going to get into that right now. And for many viewers, that surely was the first time they saw Muslim representation on TV that wasn't a stereotype or something, and instead was an actual person with depth and nuance and empathy and all that. In bits and pieces, the show can have a legitimate positive effect on the world in that way.
Yeah. I mean, there's worse Big Brother players. Not a ton.
Brussels sprouts, bro. Brussels sprouts.
Met the Colonel! I'm awesome with the lightsaber. I'm awesome without the lightsaber. I'm good with my hands. I'm good with my feet.
No, I'm serious. Like, yeah, it's a dumb game show in a parking lot with farts and aliens. But ultimately, each season is also always
Name
a
that
story.
toot.
And part of what makes stories
Was
great
kinda funny,
is that
I'll
they
be honest.
expand our view of the world beyond what we see in our own neighborhood. The
They
social
snapped at
dynamic
that one.
side of Big Brother's snow globe society that we're watching play out for 3
Okay. They kind of nailed the pressure cooker on BB25. Like, I understand. Like, I think our aesthetic was really fun. I enjoyed how they did it. It was like a fun twist on it with the scary verse. Obviously, there's like, the twist and everything that made it bad. I think they did a good job with like. It was a very
does that
cool, like
plenty.
we're all in a
And
circle
I'd say
like
that.
that.
The
I thought
structural
it was fun.
side of that society provides
Flies was
even
funny.
more clear parallels. Starting in season 6, whenever somebody wins the HOH each week, they have the privilege of sleeping in their own huge room that rests a floor above the rest of the house. It's lavish, it's secluded, and it allows you, in your new position of power, to literally look down on all of the other players for the entirety of that week. From up here, you can see that they're smaller than you. They're less than you. The HOH down to
Is
nominee
an
power
inspired choice.
structure echoes way beyond just the general strategic game of who you're nominating or evicting or whatever.
Thanks,
The obvious
Brianna.
visual
for
here
the gift.
represents a slippery slope that players
I was so
often
close to
fall
fucking
down
up again.
as, even though this
Thank
is
you,
all
Brianna.
just within some silly game, a person's behavior
There's a
and
cute
treatment
Americory
of
segment
others
during
can
it,
be
too.
drastically affected by their
Y'all are
position
cooked.
within that power structure. Like with someone being up there as HOH, what repeatedly happens is that someone will get into that position, and even though the game is designed so that it has a harsh time limit,
I
of
don't think
7
I would get
days,
HOH-itis.
the power doesn't take that long to get to their
I
heads.
think I would spend as little time
Extreme
in the room as
cases of
possible.
this are so common that they have a name for it. HOH-itis. When you're the only person who's completely safe, everyone else's fate is in your hands, and they're all coming to you, kissing your ass, giving you info, you start to feel indestructible. Everything is going great.
I feel like me as HOH would be like Jim Halpert when he becomes like the substitute regional manager or whatever, and then he's trying to hang out with people like normal, but no one's like shooting the shit with him anymore.
Clearly not just because I'm HOH. More so because I'm so
Sorry,
naturally
Carson.
amazing. So yeah, I can talk down to people without thinking twice about it because surely they realize
My
that
HOH
everything I
album.
say is accurate.
I think the first
and I
one
can
I put
isolate
was
others if I please. They
the
deserve
Forever
that
Story by
treatment for going
JID,
against
but
me.
there
And I
was
can
some Carly
domineer over
albums,
what my
Emotion
alliance
was
believes
there.
I should do this week.
How
or
I'm
even
Feeling
go
Now,
rogue
Charlie,
and make some
Sawayama.
off-the-wall move instead. Or just change my mind a million times and vocalize every single instance of that happening. It'll all be fine for me because I'm... Wait, what's happening?
String Ways are back again.
You can't do this to me. You can't send me home. This is a mistake. Don't you know who I am? I put the puzzle together the fastest. I won the fart competition. You dare strike at me? Plenty of players have doomed their own games due to how they
I was one of the
handled
only
that
people
power
in
and how they treated
Big
people
Brother
during
25
that
to
time.
survive the
Completely losing
week
perspective
following
of
your
what it was
HOH.
like down there,
And it was
what
it was
will
not
be like when you're
I barely
down there
survived
again.
it.
It happens so much that there are still several players on each season who are taking a page out of the Dr. Will playbook by throwing HOHs for at least the whole first half of the game. And sure, that worked out for him.
Yo. Where are we going with this? Yeah.
But really, no. Being HOH is a good thing if you're even a half-decent player. Besides...
I think it's circumstantial. I hear, like... Okay. Here's the truth. You ready? You ready for me to drop the knowledge bomb? If you're a good player, you could usually figure something out when you're HOH. If you're a good player who's self-aware of your position, it's a decision to make every round. It's a real decision you have to make, at least in the early stages. If I win HOH in week 3, it's a really bad thing for me. It's really bad. You can't convince me otherwise. Best case scenario, I put up like Red and Bowie and get Heisem out. And I just, Red and Bowie are pissed at me. And I theoretically, I'm promising them I'm not going to nominate him every week. So it's like, obviously, I think for most people, it's a better option just to go and win. For myself included, basically the entire season. Because it's like you can't be certain enough of your position, and it's better to just figure it out with the power. But I don't think it's as simple as, like, it's throwing competitions is bad. I think that's an oversimplification.
It's getting a target of yours out of the house, which is already pretty good for you. It's the best
We're
time
already
to
over halfway
build the
through.
trust and pull in
Yeah,
allies,
well.
to gather info from the other players, and from that gain a more accurate understanding of the overall house dynamics.
Would you throw a comp
which,
now?
aside from just having generally
very specific
positive
circumstances,
relationships
but I
with
don't
people,
think so.
is the most valuable thing you can have in
I
this
think
game.
maybe if I won
So you're
HOH,
missing out on that. And even
I
if
might
you feel
throw
you're
a veto
currently
after
in
that,
a solid
maybe,
position,
like in that kind of
every
spot.
time you throw an HOH, you're risking some other player who you aren't closely connected to winning it, succeeding on those fronts, and turning the landscape of the game in their favor rather than yours. So going for those benefits is worth way more than the negatives of being seen as slightly more of a comp threat, and maybe the nominee who stays
You
being
can change your
upset with
position so much with HOH.
It's-
I just think you have to look at it from the other perspective. Riley won week 1 HOH, was evicted week 2. Heisem won week 2 HOH, was evicted week 3. Felicia won week 3 HOH. Okay, she's stuck around for a while. Cam wins week 4 HOH. He's targeted week 5. He wins week 6 HOH. He's evicted week 7. Jared wins week 5 HOH. Is evicted week 7. Like, I think in those early weeks, it's tough sometimes.
Still, plenty of people throw because of the fear of so clearly and visibly
They were all bad
not
players.
being equal
Most
to
players
the
are
other
bad,
players,
though. If
and
your
how
rules
that
are
can
just
warp your
for good
perspective.
players, that's fine.
Especially when you
But
and
that's
your
different.
core group of allies go an extended period of time without ever falling out of power and being in true danger. It's yet another obvious parallel to people who have been privileged for so long that they can't remember what their earlier life was even like. They lose perspective on reality and make no effort to understand other people's situations. Those people, in real life and in Big Brother, will always inflate how hard they worked for what they have and how
Comparison.
skilled they are in this current environment, and soon reach a point where they
I
can't
wouldn't put
handle
Jag in
the
that category,
smallest
I'll
of
tell you that
losses.
much.
In
Matt,
their
for
minds,
sure, but
me
Jag
being
was...
remotely humbled would just be so
He went through the
undeserved.
ringer.
Other people being able to play the game just as I am would be incredibly unfair. And really, when you think about it, even though I'll remain in a perfectly comfortable position regardless, I'm the real victim here. Does that sound familiar? Anywhere. Yeah, that's what happens when you become conditioned to only knowing success and never having a real failure with consequences. Within a few good weeks in the house, it can happen. Practically season
So
after
annoying.
season. That stuff has always and will always be present in the game to some extent. That's people, that's psychology, that's real life. And again, a lot of people may hear that and think, why the hell would I watch this? I have to deal with these people at work or on the news or whatever. It's not fun. But in Big Brother, what keeps the human intrigue of this and alleviates the frustrating aspects is that the comeuppance happens much more often than it does in real life. Not always,
More
but
often
much
than in real life,
That's
for sure.
what the game
but
is designed
not
to
that
do.
often.
You can go from the top to the bottom, or
What are
vice
the biggest collapses we've had in recent seasons? Like, does Tucker even have a fall from grace? I don't think he does. Like, a little bit, but not really. It didn't feel super satisfying. Surrey, 100%. But, like, Surrey even made it very far. But, like, that power structure collapsed. 24 had an awesome one. 23, the power structure never collapsed. 22, it never collapsed. 21, it kind of collapsed, but, you know, they still won. 20, it never collapsed. Like,
versa in the blink of an eye. So you can actually
Monty
reasonably
losing to Taylor.
expect that
Yeah, I mean,
consequences
24
will eventually meet those who
it
deserve
collapsed
some.
like on
Even
Daniel
if,
and Nicole
at
and
this
Amira,
moment,
and then
they're very
Taylor
powerful.
winning the whole thing. Like,
the hierarchy of the game being
that
as
had a lot of
flexible
examples.
as that also
Jack
sheds
in
light
21,
on
like,
how
I
much
guess.
having a more well-rounded perspective and varied
but
experiences
Jackson winning the whole
is
thing
to
is
your
like,
benefit.
okay.
Decently often, we've seen people go from being in power and annoying everyone to being knocked down below with all the peasants, and immediately they become so much more likable. Being low on the totem pole often brings with it self-deprecation, being more welcoming to these other house guests who are on the same level as you now.
I'm trying to think if there's any
complete
players who
changes
were
in demeanor,
insufferable on the
as well
bottom.
as their game sense. They generally come out of that loss having a better understanding of the house layout.
Cameron was weird, because Cameron was the fucking same both
They
times.
should aim for now, and what their own faults as a player are.
Kayla, I
It's
don't think
bizarre how
anyone
quickly it can all
disagrees with
happen,
you.
where fans
It's
can
not
go
like a
from
hot take.
hating this person on their screens to loving them. But that's the value of a wider perspective. Because even strictly being on the bottom without any experiences of what it's like higher up, while obviously you're not likely to be as
obviously he was bad, but
unlikable
he was,
and
like, even
egotistical
worse
as
when he
those
was
who
in
have
the bottom.
always been
He
on
was so
top,
bitchy.
it can bring its own issues to your mindset. Like sometimes players who have never known true power and influence in the game end up growing content with their mediocre position. Even if an opportunity to change their position presents
Poor
itself,
Verbena.
they may play it safe and not really feel like they can afford to take a risk. They settle down where
I
they
would not
are
want to be in
because
this
it feels
montage.
like there's no point to doing anything otherwise. Even
I don't
though
know if
there's always
Chada belongs there.
Or in other cases, rather than wanting to flip the entire structure,
Not as
this
much as
sort
the
of
other people.
powerless position brings about a greater selfishness where some players merely believe that one day they'll join the people already at the top of the tower. They can reject and foil any of the plans that the other bottom feeders make to improve all their positions at once, and instead just suck up to the power until they let them in and them.
You don't remember the deal with the costume? He was extreme!
alone. Of course, in those cases,
Come on.
as we see
How do
repeatedly
you not
elsewhere,
remember?
they'll never let you in. If they already haven't been helping you whatsoever, and yet you help them anyways, then they don't need to change a damn thing. It's a delusion leading to self-sabotage. These are all cases where...
Honestly, Big Brother 21 would be a good challenge cast. It would obviously have its same exact, like, racial problematic problems. But, like, if you just take, like, the final 12 on, it'd be a fucking shit show. Maybe remove Cliff, Nicole, you know?
people's perspectives aren't formed.
And they chose Tommy and Annalise. Which I prefer them than, like, you know, Mickey and Jack. I don't really like Annalise, but...
box. Obviously, their environment and circumstances hold a major role.
Cliff wins
And
Hall
the
Brawl.
layer to it all that I find the most interesting, specifically tying to the higher end of a power structure and essentially absolute power
Oh,
corrupting
come on,
absolutely, there's a particularly harsh result of playing this game, where you wrestle control from reality and actively adjust your perception of others in order to deal with your own guilt of having power over
I
them.
hate that house. The white floors
Being
are
inside that house,
vile.
you're so locked into your own perspective and are taught to not second guess it that much.
clip.
Otherwise, you'd be blowing with the wind, since everyone is telling you different stories every other day. You'll lose stability, you'll go crazy. That's why when you want to influence someone on, for example, what nominations they should make after they just became HOH, you have to get in their ear early. It's easier to help build out and form their perspective on what path to take than it is to actively change their mind. That's a fact in general when dealing with people's opinions on anything. In Big Brother, if you only start working on that after they've been heavily leaning towards and probably vocalized to some people a certain direction, they're less likely to fully flip that, because in a way, that would be admitting that they were wrong. Their initial instinct and thoughts would have been a mistake. And simply put, people don't want to admit that they're fallible. As the saying goes, it's easier to fool someone than it is to convince them they've been fooled, you know?
I feel
They
like
want
this
to
is a
feel like they're
superpower
right
of mine.
all the time because they're so gosh darn smart. And beyond the complications that brings to the
I'm a
strategic
know-it-all,
game
but I am
and how
very
much
much
precision is then actually needed to turn
aware
a
of the
player against their
mistakes.
allies,
I think that's Cameron's
it also
biggest
ties
flaw,
into
right?
what I touched on with BB2, where people are so drawn to not feeling like they're in the wrong strategically or personally that they will opt to rationalize their
Self-aware
decisions
know-it-all.
and soothe
Maybe
their
that makes me
mind
just
however
like
they
the
can.
most unself-aware know-it-all.
believe it's in my best interest
The
to
rare
keep
know-it-all
it,
who thinks
but
he's self-aware and
I
talks
don't
about it a
wanna
lot.
be made a target because I chose to go against what the house wants.
Often, it is by pushing the blame onto this entity known as the...
Can I say something? Leah targeting T-Core was fine. It wasn't perfect, like it was a mistake, but it was fine. I've seen so much worse.
the house. They'll say that the house
It wasn't that bad. Like, she just shouldn't have gone on MJ's HOH. She should have been fine there.
has decided you should go, so I have no choice but to fall in line with that. Who exactly is the house is rarely specified because the people actually in control at the center of everything use their whole web of
Just because it could
relationships
have been
and
worse
influence.
doesn't mean it was fine. Like, I think the way I would view it is like, okay, Cory targeting Blue at the final 9 instead of Matt and Jag is a mistake, but I still am screwed either way. You know, like, maybe she could just comp out with MJ, I guess is the theory, but could she even get Chelsea evicted? I don't think she could. Like, how does she get Chelsea evicted exactly?
Influence to spread that narrative and social pressure throughout the cast without the source being squarely assigned to them. Of course,
I
in
guess
the
you're saying
end,
put up Chelsea
who
and
you
T-Core,
nominate,
and then it's like
who you
Kimo,
vote to
Rubina,
evict,
and...
that is your choice and your choice alone, regardless of what the other players plan.
And
yet
who won the
you
veto that
often go
week?
to where the wind is blowing instead. Wanting others to be with you on that is reasonable.
Because you have to
can't
assume
play
like
this game
Cam or
alone.
MJ
You
have a good
need
shot at
allies.
winning the veto.
But people often fall
It's
in
Angela
line
and
with
Leah
what
who
the
win the
default
vetoes,
choice
right?
was to their
Yeah, I
own
mean, in
detriment.
retrospect, you could do it.
Because
I think
their
in the
mind
moment,
will
it's
rest
kind of a
easier
hard...
believing that they didn't
there's a lot of
actually have any
problems
agency
with
in
the plan.
sending so-and-so out of the house. It's not what I decided. It's what everyone
I don't
decided.
know. I think it's
Even the
there's
very first HOH
it's not
that
a
was
top
ever
5
crowned in
worst
the
move
show
with Big Brother 26.
started
I'll tell you that
voicing his
much.
own guilt on the very first day that he gained that power.
It was a very dark reality that hit me in the face that I was going to have to pick the 2 people to be nominated to be evicted the first week, which is everyone's biggest fear coming on the show.
Are you all right?
It's good. Yeah, it's hard.
I
It's
know.
hard.
Chelsea goes, she has
I was
MJ.
gonna
I
be
think she still
directly
thought she'd have MJ
responsible
otherwise. It was a
for
bad move,
killing
but
the
I
hopes
don't
and
think it was that bad.
dreams of one person.
These feelings are inevitable, and spreading the blame like that is simply a way around it.
I did not feel
But those
this,
cases where that's
to be honest.
relied upon are contrasted by the final few rounds of the game, where a vote truly is one person's choice alone. There are no other voters backing them. No one else's opinion matters as much as theirs. There's nobody to share the blame with. It's just you standing in front of 2 people and telling one of them that you're sending them home. That's a struggle. People will go with their alliance through every backstab, every betrayal along the way. And then they have to do it alone, and it's a lot tougher. Occasionally, their whole mindset
I don't
on the
think it was
game
that hard for
changes
Jag.
at that point. Like, especially in Survivor, as people near the finish, the
guess
idea
it was
of
hard
needing
'cause he
to
couldn't evict
take the
Matt.
best to the end may come up. To be the best, you gotta beat the best, and stuff like that. But it's such clearly warped logic when for the entire game up to that point, you've been voting out the best, i.e. the big threats, because that's how you beat them. You
Taking
vote them
turns.
out. That's the game.
It's
So
probably
why
the
is that
worst.
suddenly flipped on its
Is
head
that the
right at
worst
end?
version of that? Taking the wrong person? I think Cody and Victoria is not as bad as Wu taking Tony.
I think a big part of that is the guilt. You see firsthand just how hard they've worked to
Because
be
the Cody Derek
you
thing.
respect them and their gameplay more
First
than
of all,
someone else who's still
Big
here.
Brother's
And so you
longer,
feel
so you
bad
form deeper connections,
single-handedly
and there
taking
was
that
the
away from them.
Victoria.
So that
like, voting
idea
agreement
of
thing.
the house eases players' minds so much, to the extent that in that
Nah, I don't
season
think
where
so.
Paul came
Sorry,
back
Lucy.
as the only returnee, the big alliance became almost cultish. where people surrounded Paul as this infallible figure whose morals were unshakable despite any visible contradictions. Like, for God's sake, there's a point where Paul convinces everyone to throw a running competition to a woman who broke her foot earlier in the season.
Iconic.
These people would fall for anything. And this tight-knit, blind unification leads to them treating outsiders like...
All my dogs are barking, buddy! All my dogs are barking!
Woof! 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 How about you teach Cory the word liar? Because he lied to my face and so did you.
What type of big man are you?
I think Alex is my least favorite Big Brother player of all time, barring the obvious people.
Regardless of how Cory has acted in this game, this is harassment. It's pathetic.
There was always an next person lined up to push out, isolate, and blame all their problems on, while they were all essentially throwing their games away to help one person and demonstrating absolutely embarrassing behavior. But it's okay, because when everyone else is backing you, you believe you can wash your hands clean of your own actions.
I nominate you. I wash my hands of this.
It's a very dangerous and effective tool if you can control it.
Hands of this.
And obviously the idea of the House and the majority can make people complicit in things worse than just poor strategic decisions. But when the society of a cast does not really include that type of parachute, the point here that I've been trying to get to, but I'm very wordy, is that there's one way of relieving guilt that's always available. By far the most common, easiest, yet also least logical version of this is to heavily villainize whoever you're against in the game in whatever way makes the smallest bit of sense in your mind.
I don't know why Quinn's getting the screen time here. What did Quinn do?
It is very rare to go through an entire season of Big Brother and not at some point have a group of people who negatively pick apart every single innocuous action that this one person outside their alliance makes. Or, in general, push the narrative that all these people they've eliminated or are currently against, they were just bad people. They were all...
I think this is a problem that largely gets solved by casting more fans. The people who always do this are the people who have never seen the show before. Like, for me, it's like, I don't need a reason to turn on Izzy. I don't need a moral reason for it. I just do it because it's the right move. And I do feel guilty about it, but I understand that that guilt is okay. You know? And it's the same reason why when Izzy was betraying people, she didn't have to moralize it. She would definitely have her, moral judgments on people. But, like, ultimately, she would just... You just do it.
Liars, snakes.
The people who did it in BB26.
Because
it wasn't Joseph
guys.
And Quinn.
Unlike us,
Quinn
of course.
gave a lot
We're
of grace to Tucker.
We're the good guys.
It was
the audience
Rubina,
surely loves
Chemo,
us,
and them.
and we alone deserve to win. Now, obviously, this is dumb. There's the direct hypocrisy that can show up case to case, where there have been times where players are speaking like this, and in the next breath,
what did I miss?
Be all bad guys. Unlike us, of course. We're honest and true. We're the good guys.
Yeah,
the audience surely loves us, and we alone deserve to win. Now, obviously, this is dumb. There's the direct hypocrisy that can show up case to case, where there have been times where players are speaking like this, and in the next breath, bring up how they should keep lying to the current target this week and telling them they're safe until they're blindsided at the eviction vote for really no reason. Because, that's what the good guys would do. But even outside of that already absurd level of disconnect, there are a few hard rules that anybody should know about playing Big Brother. Firstly,
I don't know. I always thought people were a little bit hard on Jag for that. And I think Jag was annoying in the sense of the bullying and stuff. No one was really bullying Jag in that way. There were some comments that were not good, to be clear. If you want to take gripes with that, that's totally understandable. But I think people overstate how bad hypocrisy is on Big Brother. It's like Cory's getting mad at Suri that Suri's in a bunch of alliances when Cory, in fact, is in a bunch of alliances. It's like, well, it's not about that. That's not the problem here. First of all, you're just trying to get the other person out, so obviously you're not gonna admit your own faults. That's the thing I actually did that people made fun of as well.
Ever.
Suri was worse to Jag. I promise.
Assume that the audience loves you.
I promise.
Not a consistent way of knowing, and the audience's preference can change on a dime, often dependent on who's the underdog
I
at any
promise.
given point. So even if you won some fan vote in week 3, there's a decent shot that America's no longer on your side come week 8. So never say that, and if anything, it's better to openly think that you're hated by America. Having humility is way more likely to endear you to them than talking about how beloved you surely are. Secondly, lying in this game that you all signed up for, that advertises itself as a game of deception, does not inherently make you a bad person.
I saw fucking everything. Of course, you guys think I haven't seen everything? Me? You're not. It's not Jag streaming right now. You think I'm defending Jag, Bowie, and Matt and what they were doing to Felicia? That was lame as hell. It was weird. You think I'm ever going to defend Matt Klotz? Like, just be fucking for real for a second and think that maybe Cory knows some things.
Person. You can have lines crossed that you take issue with, like swearing on your kids' lives or on the Bible or whatever, but the blanket action of lying, because it's usually not the extreme cases they're dealing with. It's just, yeah, I'll keep you safe if I win HOH, followed by winning it and then putting them on the block. Doing that does not mean that person is
I just think it's rich that you guys assume that you've seen everything.
evil, just as lying in the
You know,
game of poker
that you
does.
know everything.
Thirdly, you should
That's
especially
the-
acknowledge that prior one,
That- I
because
guess
if
that's
you
the
get
part
remotely
that
far
is
in the game
frustrating to me.
with any amount of agency over your own fate, it's inevitable that you as well will have lied. You'll try to rationalize it, move the goalpost, make excuses, but no, accept it. You will have lied, you will have snaked people. Whether it's a lot or
It's
a
just
little,
frustrating.
it will have happened. So you can't act like you're above it. There are no saints here. It's wild how far from reality players will go. And again, it's because they're so harshly limited to their own perspective. They're so stuck in their own heads
Not sitting here
that they will do
fucking
anything
starting
to make
drama
that as comfortable of a
2
place
years
as
after the season,
possible
like,
for them to be.
whatever. Just, come on.
I really think that an effect of being in this sort of environment can have is that it kind of incentivizes you to remove your own empathy for other people. Like, the competitive aspect of the game makes it so you have to chop off a little empathy from the jump so that you aren't fully swayed by it every time you try to make a decision. The actual solution beyond that is to just accept your feelings for what they are. Acknowledge that I feel
It's
bad
not
about
like,
voting this person out, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Like, the feeds don't
I
show
know that
everything.
getting
kind
shut
of
out
thing.
is the
It's not
right
about
move
that.
for my game, but it just still feels just icky, like voting him out. It doesn't feel right. I mean, the two of us have been in an alliance for most of the entire game, and so I know that it's the right move, but my heart is telling me that it's not.
When it makes you sad, let yourself be sad. Don't
Sounds like
fight
you're
it.
defending them,
And that's tough.
but like you're
People
just not
don't
fucking
necessarily
listening. Then.
want
Like, I can't
to do
help
all
you.
that. So instead,
It's
you'll
just
try
like
to
sometimes
push
you
these
like
bad
people, and
feelings
then when
away
they do bad things, it's fine. And you
even
don't like
disprove
people,
them
and when they do bad things,
to
it's not
impressive
okay.
extent.
It's like, well, it's all
There's
not
plenty
okay. It's all
of
the same. You have to
doublethink
contextualize
and
everything.
cognitive dissonance as two contradicting beliefs.
And then in the same way,
try
I have to admit, like,
coexist
I
in
didn't see
one
everything.
mind
Of course not. That's
simultaneously.
impossible.
You'll
And
hear
other
people
have
speak
to
about
do
another
the same.
player like, well, they did nothing in this game whatsoever, so that's why they had no power and didn't deserve to make it as far as we did. But at the same time, they'll think, that player was doing way too much, trying all sorts of things to target us. That's why we essentially had no choice but to target them, and we shouldn't feel bad
Talking
for
about the
voting them
Jag
out.
and Cerise thing
Essentially,
between the two of them,
the
the
enemy
dynamic.
is both strong and weak. Idiocy like
'Cause that's
that
what it was
just to keep
talking
that
about.
space in your head nice and cozy. I thought about that villainization, us
Yeah,
versus
I'm
them
literally speaking
mentality
about Jag
a
in the
lot
context of
more when
Cerise.
comparing
That
these
was
two
what
South
the video was
Korean
showing
strategy
us.
shows
It was Cerise
called The
being addicted
Genius
by
and The
Jag
Devil's
lying to
Plan.
her.
Both very brainy shows, both created by the same guy, and both with similar types of people cast. The first of them, The Genius, did have alliances, and in some cases those groups did try to freeze others out of winning the match they were playing that round, arguably dirty tactics like that. However, through all 4 seasons, regardless of whatever dirty tactics are used, we don't really see those alliances villainize the outsider or see a group really run with the narrative that
This is a terrible comparison. And I love this video, to be clear. I think it's awesome. I think this guy's doing a great job. But, like, The Genius is like you come once a week and then you leave. You know, it's like you compete for one day and then you dip. But I'll let him cook.
they're the good guys, and so are the bad guys.
I'll let him cook.
points where you don't feel pretty consistent respect
He's about
among
to
the
get to that.
cast is rare.
Damn, you guys
And that's
pre-watched,
largely because on the Genius, the players get to go back home between each match that they play. Before needing to face off against these players again, they can go home, decompress, speak with friends and family.
Did I ever tell you guys a story about Yu-Yun? I have a Yu-Yun story. Yu-Hyun. I DM'd him when Zach graduated high school or college. I think high school. And I got him to like film a cameo for Zach. Because he was like an English teacher. So he spoke fluent English. I still have it, I'm sure somewhere, unless, you know, the link expired. But
family in real life. And in some cases, since the Genius is more episodic with the games they play changing each round, episodes may start airing before the season itself finishes filming.
This is crazy.
So players can watch them, see what others were doing and what their perspectives were, and that all keeps those people further humanized to each other despite the fact that they're all competing, which is something the show very much aims for. Even in an episode where someone is squarely in the antagonist role for that episode's story, it goes out of its way to highlight one point of cleverness from that person and still give you reason to respect them while you root against them. So just the same, the Genius wants its players to respect its players. Other reasons are at play, of course. Potentially a healthier cultural view on this type of competition in Korea compared to America, for one. But also, these casts aren't filled with total strangers. They're all very successful in their fields.
I think one of the big differences is Big Brother is somewhere between Survivor and Love Island in how they want to present itself. You know what I mean? The Genius is obviously at the Survivor end of the spectrum, where it's like, Big Brother tries to be a little trashy. Not like trashy, but like, you know, spring breaky, summer vacation-y. Obviously the challenge, that's all they tried to do before until they attempted, and I kind of think failed, to become more serious. Most people just want them to continue being trashy in the most positive way. I love the challenge.
Some of which being in media. So they would be more aware of the cameras, and there could be familiarity or even reverence between some players from their careers.
More fans.
But I still think being able to fully leave the
I
game for a
agree.
period of time is the biggest reason.
Yeah, you don't have to be a super fan,
Because
but like
of
a
the
Chelsea
Devil's
level fan's enough.
This is basically a spiritual sequel to the Genius.
Like who
Similar
would be that
formats,
level fan
similar
on
games,
25?
similar casting
like
types.
Mimi,
For
basically.
our purposes, the key difference is that now, for as long as you're in the game, you're living with the other players, locked away from the outside world. And with just that change, suddenly, in an otherwise extremely similar environment to the Genius, after just the very first game of the season, people start slipping into the good guy, bad guy narrative. When you fully live within the game, with no way to truly decompress, but still being highly protective of yourself, you can forget that your competitors are no different than you. On Devil's Plan, it took a while before these players did eventually catch themselves and realize, wait, I'm just working against these people in the game. It's not deeper than that. I don't need to speak about them so negatively. Relating to this, one player talks about this thing called the doorway effect. How sometimes when you enter a room, you'll suddenly forget why you went there. Because once you pass through that doorway, your previous thoughts are replaced by new ones. In the Devil's Plan, the living area is completely separate from the game area. So this guy essentially explains it as something that reinforces adversarial dynamics in-game. Because when they enter the game room, it's like the positive feelings they have
I
from
think
the
a
living
lot of
area
the issues Big Brother
suddenly
US
disappear.
had, BB Can had too.
It's an interesting idea,
I think BB
but I
Can
think the
just
reality
has
is actually
better,
kind of
like,
the opposite.
production is like
The
better
two
direction
areas
in
had a
terms of,
slight
like,
divide,
trying
but
to
we're still
do what
quite
the fans
closely
want.
connected.
But they
They're
still
still
have a lot of the same
contained within
issues
the same bubble
of, like,
the show.
really
And as
misrepresenting
long as that's the case,
misrepresentative
there's
edits
going
and
to be
stuff
some crossover of the positive feelings from the living area and then negative feelings from the game area. In which case, negative emotions tend to win out.
I guess they're going to say
They can
Big
take a
Brother,
hold
it's all
of
the
you
same.
much more easily. But that slight separation between the areas, I think, is what lessened the crossover enough to leave room for your perspective to see, as they did, that these people aren't my enemies, they're just my opponents.
Yeah, I think his
Without
argument
that
about
doorway,
there's like a
it
cultural
would have kept a
difference too is
stronger
probably
hold. Because when you
legit
take
too.
that guy's idea and apply it to Big Brother, you would think it'd mean that this show, lacking a doorway effect, would have a more positive environment. But really, it's the opposite. Everything we've gone over so far is more toxic than what the Devil's
I would
plan
think of
had.
the opposite.
That's because the extent to which the game is self-contained and isolated has a much stronger correlation to the level of negativity.
I think a big way to fix
In
this
the
is make
Genius,
the season shorter.
they all go home before the day is done and get a complete separation from the game. Not that toxic at all. The
I'm
Devil's
so curious how the Genius works in terms of, like, I'm sure someone does a deep dive, but, like, they have to communicate and shit outside of the game, right?
plan. Overall
Like, they have to.
self-contained from their normal lives, but clear separations are placed within that. Some toxicity, but it gets recognized and corrected. Big Brother. The house you live in
Jellyfish.
has
I
competitions
I
played
think
in the
you're
backyard.
very high on BB26.
Nominations happening
At
in the
least for me.
kitchen. Evictions in the living room. Constant strategizing in the bedroom. Conversations happening in the bathroom that could hypothetically be used against you at any point. The game is ever present, and
I
as
didn't like
such,
BB Ken 9 that much
it can
either,
get
so.
pretty toxic.
I didn't watch the full.
That is all so closely
like an expert
intertwined
on that season.
that you often don't even remember the difference between game feelings and personal feelings. You're too isolated within a single, narrow perspective to be able to easily parse it all out. They all
Also,
blend
like-
together, letting the game feelings tend to dominate that combination.
I kind of disagree with this just a little bit in the sense of, like, I don't think it's reasonable to separate the two. Which I know that's not really his point, but it's like, I think game decisions in Big Brother are personal because it's about evicting you from your dream and your chance of winning a lot of money. Like, I think it makes sense to take game decisions very personally. Like, there really isn't a separation between the two. Unless you're, like, a massive, massive, massive fan, like, you know, Survivor Cambodia style, where it's, like, everyone's just super fanning. You know?
Just as the prize money at the end constantly incentivizes. So in that sort of environment, where you're removed from the nuance of reality and other people's perspectives, and there are these gaps in your knowledge that you need to fill in yourself, but you aren't willing to engage in actual critical thinking and instead give yourself free rein to be as generous to yourself as possible, you end up in cases
Cambodia
where
was actually pretty bitter,
if you're
ironically,
working
yeah.
directly
But I'm
against
thinking
someone
of, like,
who's in
when
the game,
Steven
and you
was
can't
voted out, and
leave
he's
to
like,
go
"Oh,
to a
good game,
completely different
you know, that kind
area
of thing.
to forget about that same person who you just enjoyed talking to in the kitchen, then your brain
No,
might simply
BB26
turn
was
that
good.
same
I-
person into someone
I don't think it's
who
cool
you
to,
don't like.
I'm not a hater. It's not.
There's no
top tier
shortage
for me
of
at all.
compelling layers like that to dissect from the tiny world that this game
I think
is
it's
played
like.
within.
I
But
think it's
just a
honestly at the same
reminder
level
that
of
that's
25
all
and
what we
24
get
for
when
me.
we're
Like, they're
looking
all kind
through
of the
the
same.
overwhelming amount of live feed content, seeing practically every conversation and the minutia to all of them. Meanwhile, for most of the audience who's just watching the edited show, this is what they'll usually be seeing instead.
She's just bent back like a baby bird getting fed by its mom.
Oh,
Not
God.
only is he a turtle,
That hurts
but
so
he is
bad,
my
my
life
teeth.
companion.
K-I-E-J-E-J-E, you love me.
Where was it, the BB25 segment? Oh, we're at camp segment.
And look, like I said before, silliness isn't inherently bad here. I like a lot of the natural humor that you find from the house guests, especially from the stupid conversations that arise from the Big Brother house being one of the few places in the country where you'll find people who don't have access to Google.
I know my time zone, dude.
Okay, it's 8 p.m.
In the East Coast, it's an hour ahead of New Orleans.
Okay, it's 8 p.m. in California right now. What time is it in New
It
Orleans?
is 6 o'clock. Don't laugh.
Right.
You're making an ass out of yourself in front of America.
There's also this awkwardness
Iconic.
that pops up here and there, most notably through the show's host, Julie Chen, who's famously very robotic in her mannerisms, and somehow after over 2 decades of hosting, the Chen bot barely knows how to interact with human beings. The only update her programming seems to have gotten is that she became really religious in recent years.
Keep being a child of God.
Yeah. She did well in 26, though. I think you give her credit.
It's good all the time. All the time, God is good.
Like, it's weird. It's awkward.
She's not as
And perhaps
robotic
just
anymore.
out of necessity, that's been embraced by fans. So campiness actively added in by the producers isn't completely out of place here. That should be in Big Brother to some extent. To me, it feels intrinsic to the show. I still like people getting slimed in their super nice clothes. It's still funny and should happen once per season. I love that now whenever a person is mentioned in a conversation, they'll cut to that person doing something weird elsewhere in the house. Once in a while, one of the punishments
Thank
is a
you,
home
P-side.
run. Like, this is
Appreciate
honestly
P-side.
probably where the
P-side.
producers put most
I
of their
appreciate
energy. It's pretty fun making this guy
15
toot a
months,
horn and
goddamn.
announce a person's name every time someone has to use the bathroom. Or when an NPC is brought in to annoy someone for a whole day.
They haven't done this in a minute, have they?
Oh! Oh, Brett, would you be a dear and help me pick up all of my pills?
And with the costumes, one of the most clever, brutal, and most impressive
COVID thing,
strategic
maybe?
moves in the entire history of the show is based around someone convincing a man in a carrot costume to spare his life.
Again, this is a BB25
I like
week
that.
6 situation.
It's just that along with some of this, I'd still like the show to maintain a little dignity. At least a little. Just a little. Just a little tiny bit of dignity. Maybe just like
I think it's fine. It's just you gotta make sure it doesn't take too much screen time. I don't think
know
the
this is
dignity,
easy
like
content for the show to present. And
yeah,
not
like
have to think
Suri
about,
talk
but
about like the dignity of the show. It's like I
there's
don't
a
care about
line
dignity.
someplace.
It's just
I'm not
sometimes
sure
it just
where
gets boring.
exactly, but somewhere between that time a woman was dramatically praying for God to forgive her enemies, only to be interrupted by a woman in a bunny suit complaining about her outfit.
Can we get white belts in here? This is horrible.
And that time 3 people snuck into the house to use a time laser.
This was pushing it. This one was pushing
With the
it.
climax to BB2, I said the camp and serious sides were both present, but not in each other's way. Lately with Big Brother, the camp is in the way a lot of the time. Most of these exceptions I bring up are gimmicks that
He's saying
still
exactly what I
work in
just said.
tandem with the character and personalities of the players and what they're doing. Suri performing these weird superhero tasks isn't that funny. But Suri not bothering to hide her immense disdain for the producers who
funny in
make
the
her do
house.
this is funny.
It's been 78 days
It's
in this
just
house.
maybe I'm biased because I was in the block
Jared
and it was
went
not funny.
a
in
while
the house.
ago. Izzy's been gone practically from the beginning, it feels like. And now, to add insult to injury, you put me in this dumbass costume?
A good chunk of the humor isn't like that. The wackiness generally gets more childish and repetitive while also more domineering in how the show presents and advertises itself. Like a fart joke here and there is fine by me. But when the start of the final competition of the season, where the stakes are the highest they've ever been.
They better not say the cat competition was bad, because the cat competition in BB18 was fire. I don't care what people say. That was like my favorite part 1 of Final HOH ever.
Ben for these people who have lasted 90 plus days in this house is fully based around giant farting unicorns. Like, what are we doing here? Is that really worth putting in?
I kind of like
this
this one
moment?
too. I think it looks cool.
Why? Basically, this sort of stuff that's in a lot of competitions or punishments or DRs, it isn't one person being in a carrot costume during a dramatic moment. It's everyone being in a carrot costume. It's not a giant peanut butter jar, it's 5 giant jars of boogers. I don't know. The point
not a winner,
is that the
baby.
balance is off. This is why I don't show Big Brother to any of my
I don't
friends.
know.
I think of the campiness
I
as
I agree, but like
the
BB25,
sprinkles
I
on
think
ice
nailed
cream.
it. I thought it was really funny.
Fun to have there.
Having everything
I like
in 1
sprinkles,
week.
but you can't eat a cone full of sprinkles.
I almost liked it because
You'll
we
die.
didn't have that
The
much
main
crazy
piece
shit
has to be
outside
the
of that
ice
week.
cream,
We had
which
Cockadoodle
in this
Zoom,
case is the
but then after that,
strategic
it was like
game and the human
basically
drama.
just week
When
6
that
and then
part
comic
isn't
week.
made the priority, their presence within episodes is only ever in the most straightforward way, showing the bare minimum to how we get from person A becoming HOH to person B being evicted, missing out on so much of the nuance, the back and forth, the personal drama, the fact that this one person who wasn't in the episodes at all was
The
actually
gas mask,
completely
I didn't
responsible
care.
for
I
this
thought it was
happening. What really happened?
I thought it was cool. I wish we got to
almost
keep it. I don't know
always
why we
holds
didn't.
more intrigue
Seems
than
like
what
the type
was
of thing they
edited
put
and
in your
presented
box.
to a general audience. So in any season where the episodes are worthwhile, the feeds will be
Jasmine
even
looks a
more
little bit
so,
like Brooklyn.
and
Like,
just
they're different,
offer
obviously,
the
but I think they look a
overall
little
more
similar.
tense, dramatic, compelling viewing experience. I'd always
Do you wish you had a
advise to keep
costume?
up with the feeds, though that can come in several forms.
Sure.
You don't have to
I think it'd be fun.
necessarily be watching them 24/7. It's
But
a big thing to keep up with alone time.
I feel like I wanted one more in the
Plus,
house. In
dealing
retrospect, I'm
with
like,
the
"Eh, it's fine."
whispers and the downtime and the feed cuts. That's not for everyone, and to be honest, I don't do it often either. So instead, plenty of people keep up to date with places like Reddit or that other place, where those who do watch everything discuss what's happening and
I was
post
trying
clips of
to
relevant
tag
moments.
this
Over the years, there have been
like
specific
Twitter in the
websites for
tweet, and I
detailed
was like, oh,
feed
they only had a
updates.
blue sky. I'm like,
Or
respect.
now there's
They're
plenty of
sticking with it.
videos and podcasts of people recapping each day's events, assessing where the players all
Shoutouts, Cliff
stand
Notes.
and what might occur from there. One of, if not the biggest, is Rob Has a Podcast, where Taron
Sure.
Armstrong has done daily updates for 8 straight US seasons and several Canadian ones in between.
It was day 1, day 2, day 4, day 27, day 41, day 57, day 86, day 99 in the house. And today is day 100.
Consistent, informative, and entertaining.
It's crazy.
That would be my recommendation for the best, easy way to keep up with the live feeds. Maybe even when the season is bad, because
It's such a commitment.
when Big
You're
Brother
always on
is
call,
really
basically.
bad, podcasts and fan communities at least let everyone commiserate and make fun of how terrible it is together. Big Brother fans, like any fandom, there's bad people there, especially since the show is basically on 24
Big Brother
hours
Reddit's
a day
not
for
that bad
several
of a
months.
place.
There's a lot of
It's not great,
investment
but
that
it's
goes
pretty
into
good
watching that, so
compared to
yeah,
anywhere
toxicity
else,
can put
basically.
itself out in front. I don't know how many times
It's just a
fans have
certain,
tried
like,
to get a player they
perspective,
hated
though, so it's
fired
like
from their real job. But there's still so much good in there, and
Certainly a lot of
truthfully,
groupthink.
out of all the fandoms I've been a part of, I think Big Brother fans might be the funniest. Every season offers new opportunities for
Sure,
running
funnier-
jokes that
definitely
they'll
funnier
take
than
further
Survivor,
than
funnier
anyone
than the
else,
challenge.
and
I'll say
somehow
that.
have it still be funny. Joseph (25) is a recent favorite, and I won't explain what it means. It's a big part of the experience
Big Brother's
that
pretty
keeps
funny.
people around, even when Big Brother, yet again, fails to live up to its potential. And on that often repeated circumstance, there's one last aspect to the game that leads to these failures that's worth quickly going into before I start to wrap up, and that's focused on the competition aspect of the game.
Oh.
So, a lot of what I've praised about Big Brother is due to the fact that power can shift so easily in the
We
game.
got to this part of
The
the
first
video.
HOH competition can be won by the big buff guy, but then the next one is won by the nerdy smart woman, then the older guy, then the ditzy person, the average Joe, etc., etc. The power position
The
is
average
constantly
Joe, poor
changing,
guy.
thus generating more interest in how people strategically maneuver through the game. That's what you get when the competitions being played are generally testing these really random skills. Counting to exactly an hour, chopping onions, skee ball, estimating the quantity of an object in the given display, figuring out which of the players' faces have been mangled together in these monstrosities.
It's just like
They're
it's
weird,
such a
unorthodox tasks.
So many of their
So
decisions
you're not likely to have
with
the
like
same
the competitions they design is an effort of making it easier on them in the edit. Just give a nice long competition to edit, and it's very simple. Because you don't know, if you got to fill like 40 minutes, it's a lot of work. Like,
and sweep and be able to win most or all of them
I don't
against their
know,
competitors.
it's such a bummer
The
because these
power
comps are so
moves
easy
around.
to design.
For many seasons,
They did
that
better
was
in
the case.
26,
Seeing
so
anybody go on a long winning streak, or even for the same core alliance to maintain power week after week,
You'd
was
almost
very rare.
hope it would have worked
Over
out better,
time,
though.
this
Like,
is
it wasn't
basically
super
flipped.
equitable outcomes,
At this
but
point,
it
it's
was-
rare
the
to
comps
not
were
see
designed pretty
one
well.
person or a pair of players go on a big comp run each season, often down to the very end of the game. So then the power dynamics, especially towards the end, become very stagnant.
The Michael stuff is so
Competitions,
impressive because
through
he
having
beat some
varied
dogs.
winners,
There was some good
should be
competitors.
something
Taylor
that
was
helps
really
keep
solid.
the
Monty was
direction
really
of the game
solid.
fluid
Turner was pretty
and
solid in
make it
comps
so that
too.
the players
Won
themselves
5,
have to
right?
constantly be working to maintain
Kyle
the
was
path
good,
of the game in
obviously.
the shape that they desire
Brittany won some
as their
stuff.
surroundings change.
Mostly
But
with
there
Michael,
are
but
many cases now where the competitions lean too far in a certain direction, and instead of forcefully opening new paths in the game, they limit the potential for social and strategic maneuvering. There are a few mistakes that lead to this issue. Firstly, competitions seem to have been leaning more and more towards
This
the
was crazy.
physicality
Why'd they do this,
aspects that really fit people will win. Comps have to have more running around, carrying big things, holding onto a zip line. Even endurance competitions,
That's
which
gotta
used
be
to
one of
be
the
where the
most
smaller
frustrating
people
comps
had
ever.
an advantage,
Why'd they do
have
that
seemingly become
in
more based
25?
around forearm
Why'd they put
strength,
zip lines there?
as you suddenly have bigger guys repeatedly winning them. With others, even if there's a mental component with a puzzle or something at the end, it's seemingly not difficult enough to offset that and act as an effective equalizer. And that issue is expanded when you look at casting and see that the group of players each season aren't well balanced for that sort of thing. They cast a lot of fit men, maybe only one or two who aren't because, they want good-looking guys with abs to put on TV. Right? But with the women's side of the cast, it's basically the opposite. You're going to get 2 or 3 women
Madeline, for the 15
who are
months.
particularly athletic. So this creates an imbalance where, I said before that power is briefly distributed equally after each eviction, when basically anybody could become the next HOH. In a way, that hasn't been as true lately. Just look at the tally for HOHs and vetoes won by men versus women in a recent season. A season where, not until the final 3, were there ever more men than women. A season where...
Yeah. I will say, BB26 is kind of the opposite of this, but, 26 is the outlier, Shoutouts to Blue. Honestly, Blue should have lost that veto, not just to save me, but because I feel like it would have made this point stronger. But thank you, Malfna, for the
not
sub.
until the final 3 were there ever more men than women in the game, and yet it was still this imbalanced. Stats like that, which many seasons leading up to it share, don't lie. There's clearly a problem.
Bowie won all the.
In Survivor,
the only physical
it's not
combo woman
even
won
nearly
was
as
Riley,
important
right?
for challenges to
It was
be
Bowie
balanced
winning
because
through
immunity
quizzes,
doesn't give
Blue
inherent
winning the
power
crapshoot,
the way
Felicia winning the
HOH and
crapshoot.
veto does. But
Just
over
Riley.
there, they've pretty
That
much
was
nailed
day
down
3,
how to
day
balance
4.
these. Whether it's in tougher puzzles or
day
weird
2,
carnival games or the endurance challenges, each emphasizing different muscles, so it's not always just whoever has the biggest arms wins. The challenges there result in pretty varied winners.
It is so funny how
so
much
I don't
more
know
equitable
why
Survivor
Big
is.
Brother alone has faltered
At least
in that aspect.
individual immunity was.
I just don't think it should be the case where you put the token older person on this show, and 75% of the time they're walking out into the backyard, seeing the competition, and immediately knowing, okay, there's no chance in how I'm winning this one. You theoretically want anybody to be able to gain power at any point in time. That's a huge part of what maintains intrigue in the game for both viewers and players.
If some
When
butts
that's
were
only
candy
the
and
case,
nuts, it'd be Christmas right
maybe
here.
half the time, the overall game is too slanted towards specific players. No longer are HOH competitions almost always quizzes, and vetoes stuff like corridor, duckball, going down a slip and slide, or drinking gross stuff and then playing croquet. Just all these tasks with such specific, unique skill sets that it's not immediately obvious who, if anyone, has a large advantage. One of the all-time great moments in the show is based around a competition that didn't really have any skill set. In the first All-Star season, you had one player return from the very first season
I kind of
Big Brother.
didn't like
A
this
man
comp,
by the
to be
name
honest.
of Chicken
I
George.
liked it,
Yes,
but
there's people with weird nicknames on the show.
I don't like when it's just a how much do you want it. Because, when you're on the block and you're the target, you could just win every time. You know what I mean?
Chicken George.
I think that's a little bit lame.
But I'm running out of time here.
Pressure cooker is perfect. Because in the pressure cooker, it's how much you want it, but there's still, an element of performance you have to do.
So with him also just seeming like a nice but fairly uncomplicated older guy.
Jag really wanted to win the pressure cooker. He knew Cam won, he'd be screwed, and he still lost,
that he doesn't deserve to be there. So early on, he's nominated and likely to go home as an easy target. But George, more than anything, wants to prove himself and earn his place in the game. And when the veto competition happens, it's based around exactly that. Determination. How bad do you want
James,
it? What are you willing to do
what question
to
did
ensure
James
you
go
win
out on here?
This one competition. George is there against all these big guys and goes as far as you possibly can in the competition. Without hesitation, he says, yes, I'll burn my clothes. I'll let the other players write and draw stuff on my
Was
body,
it shaving his
even if
head?
it
He
means
might have
the
gone
show
out
has to
before
censor
that.
my chest for the rest of the episode. I'll paint myself blue. I'll shave my head. I'll give up my chance to play next week's veto.
Oh,
I
the
will
no
forego
veto. I think that was
normal
it,
human
right?
food and instead
I
eat
understand
this
that 'cause,
disgusting
you know,
slop
James
for the entire rest of the season.
Was HOH,
Just
so
give
it's
me
like-
that veto.
Can't play next week at all. That's scary.
The fact that this sweet older guy could wipe the floor with these muscly dudes, that's way more badass, heartening, and entertaining
Someone drew, like,
than
a dick on him.
run here, throw this, solve this puzzle. Now, for all I care, the competitions
They
could just
keep
be
shave
a
your
rock,
head of
paper,
any women
scissors
are playing.
tournament every time, since
I
it's just
think they
not
would've,
where
yeah.
the main intrigue of Big Brother is. But this shows they can have...
Hey, hot take for any Genius fans. I don't even know if it's a hot take. Death matches are usually ass.
them be an entertaining
It's
part
so
of the
boring.
show while also being balanced so that basically anybody can win them. They could still do that because they
I
did do
agree.
that for years
Maybe
and
not
years.
luck or chance,
That's
but
clearly
like,
what should happen.
you know,
Either
a
vary
mix
up
of
the
skill and
competitions
luck.
like that, or make your casting more squarely focused on athletic people.
Just
That
no
way we aren't
athleticism
ever
is the main
watching
thing.
like, geez, I wonder who will win this running competition.
Why'd they
One
put
of
so
the
many
two women
stairs,
in their
man?
50s and 60s? Or the 6-foot-something literal Olympian? Like, come on, it's just not fun. It's Big
Why'd they put
Brother
so many
rejecting
stairs,
its
man?
own strengths. And that hurts to see.
Boo.
So now we've gone over all these different areas of Big Brother that can majorly hinder the game and the show. And there are more of them. If I had even less respect for your time, then I probably could have had a whole segment on casting. But we're sticking with these. And what I want to do is lay out
What do
more
I think about
clearly how
casting?
several of these issues can coalesce to
I think it's
sour
getting
the
better,
show
actually.
despite everything
I didn't
the
like
season
the
has
way
going
they did it in
for it.
26. Just
I'm
going to
go into further detail on last year's season because Big Brother 25 is a crystal clear representation of this. The first
I think BB25 is a great example because there was so much getting in your own way on behalf of production. You know what I mean? It wasn't just like a truly dreadful season. Like it was so many active decisions that made it what it was.
half had so many good characters, so much strategic movement.
Yeah.
Several instances of one guy who nobody wanted to win a competition winning it. And it was wrapped around this player, Sari, the well-experienced former Survivor player. She was masterful socially. She has natural charisma and care to make everyone trust her and get her and her closest allies in all of the main alliances without
This
them
is
even
true.
winning power. But her as all of the main alliances without them even winning power.
Yeah, the alliance names is just a Big Brother thing. I like
But
it.
her,
I don't
as
like when
well
they
as
bring it
her
on other shows.
allies, were a little sloppy strategically. So while they were successfully pinning each of these big alliances against each other while they sit comfortably in the middle, when it came to each eviction vote, they were constantly flip-flopping on who to send home and who they can trust. At some points putting in all the work to flip the entire vote against a person, only to change their minds and flip the entire vote back. Like to have the potential to practically snap your fingers and change who goes home each week. We've seen players with that level of power before, but they're generally focused enough to pick a lane and stay the course. They don't need to use their power in that way.
What's funny is, sir, you can
Have
never
a
change
player
Jared's mind.
who
So, like,
actually does it, who
she
snaps
couldn't
their
always do
fingers
what
to
you wanted.
change the target again, and again, and again, and again, and again. It's insane. The season starts with weeks and weeks of their own chaos and paranoia, and yet, complete control. You begin to believe that they'll somehow never lose their grip on the house, but that even if they don't, it'll still be fun.
When it comes down to it, though, I'm not depending on anybody else to save me. I want to save myself and Jared and Izzy and Felicia.
But the way it went was that the gradually bubbling effects of flip-flopping and some accelerating personal conflicts, plus a bad HOH outcome, resulted in the player closest to that core flipping on them, there being a huge argument, almost the entire layout of alliances in the house being exposed, and a new alliance being made to vote out one of Suri's closest allies, and soon after, her other closest ally. The hierarchy had fully restructured after...
I think it would have been much more interesting this season if I didn't, but everyone would hate me. You know, like if I didn't do it and gave into the Suri steamroll, like it would have just been the steamroll, and I would have been such an idiot. You know what I mean? So like, in order to have the best seasons of the week, you had to sacrifice the rest of the season. But like in the moment, people were thirsty for it.
After almost 6 full weeks of Suri spinning them all around in circles, using nothing more than her words. It was the most I had loved Big Brother in a long time. basically
man.
since I had started watching. And the
And
momentum
then,
was there for it to
And
continue.
things turned around.
But it grinds to a halt right there and completely tanks in quality. It largely fails in three main areas. First, at the point where this guy was briefly voted out, a twist came in that made it so either him or the person voted out right before him would return to the game. And fine, whatever, we've done stuff like that before.
This is all after Jag already came back.
But this time, instead of doing that right away and getting back to the game, they decided to have us wait. We do almost an entire week of absolutely nothing until next Thursday, when we do one simple competition that could have been an email to see which one of them goes back into the game. Gripping television that totally isn't just here to stall.
What's so frustrating about this was like, the problem was fixed for them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say this was like the solution, but Luke said the N-word. They should have just kept Kirsten. And then I know they did Zombie Week because there was like a scheduling thing where there's only 2 episodes that week. But like, shit, you could fit what you need into 2 episodes. That's the reason we need Zombie Week. The solution was right there.
A week because executives wanted to make the season extra long after the writer's strike. Truly. Then, a while after that, there was another twist where the important part about it here is that it was possible for someone to win HOH 2 weeks in a row, potentially removing the key aspect of Big Brother's format, which is that power always shifts week to week. And of course, it's Big Brother, so Murphy's Law happens, and the same guy wins twice in a row.
It's also,
so those are both needless twists that disrupt the pace of the game
the Invisible HOH
by either
thing, I think, was
pausing
even
it
worse than
completely or basically taking what should have been the dynamics for 1 week and stretching them across 2 weeks. Next, the competitions felt like they were at their most imbalanced here. And like when you watch some of them in isolation, they don't immediately feel super slanted towards the guys.
Oh God, I'm so nervous.
This was the season that those imbalanced statistics that I showed earlier were from. It's tough to argue with those, and there isn't a great way for other people to offset that in the game when they gotta push against these twists too. First, this guy is winning everything, so you vote him out. Okay, success. Then these guys start winning everything, so okay, you vote out this guy.
Let me look at these
him out.
guys.
Okay, it's
Is
against
this
these
Heisem?
twists too. First, this guy is winning everything, so you vote him out. Okay, success. Then these guys start winning
That's Cameron.
everything, so okay, you vote out this guy.
That was
But
red
nope,
for a second.
his buddy wins an advantage and saves him, so the eviction is
Yeah,
canceled.
this was the problem.
Alright, no big deal. After a few more rounds, you just vote the other 2 guys out. But then one of them wins his way back in. Vote him out again after he already won some more, and then this guy wins 2 HOHs in a row, and then, okay, it's final 6, so you're just screwed now. The idea of just voting out the physical threats doesn't
I love
even
the,
work.
the
It was
style.
like slicing the head off of a hydra. So that's just boring. It keeps a lot of power in the same hands. And that ties into the last issue, where because of that consolidated power
Yeah,
towards
so,
the end
so
of the
what, so what was it? It was Cameron, Jared, Cory, Cameron, Bowie, Jag, Bowie, Matt, Jag. I think I forgot one Bowie at the final
we get
four.
a lot
Like,
of
it
the,
was,
we're the only people who deserve to
yeah,
win.
Bowie won at 4. I
We're
guess.
the good people. We played with honor. Blah, blah, blah. It's that common annoying mindset, but there's no other shoe to drop. It just goes on for a few weeks until the end.
I
With the same
mean,
people
BB26
winning,
was just
then
shorter.
thinking they're strategic masterminds, even
And
though the
the AI
strategy
arena
each
basically
week
kept
just
the strong
evolves
guys
to,
in the same way.
This person's the next biggest comp threat, so yeah, they can go. And that leaves the people who showed so much skill at the strategic and social game being almost locked out of any situation where they can actually use those skills. Everything that was great about the first half was gone, completely sucked out by Big Brother's own decision.
Here's what I'll say. I think that side of the house could have done a lot of things to win the game. And yeah, but after, the house flipped, I think it's over. I don't think there was anything Suri could have done or anything Felicia could have done. Like, I think it was over at that point. But before that, there was a lot of different paths. I don't know what my path is, honestly. I think that's a bit harder because I, obviously wasn't in with Suri and Jared in that way. But,
and a little bit of bad luck. Plus, for us viewers, just sprinkle on top of that the annoying parts we always have to watch, with the diary rooms and the general cheesy tone.
They made the wrong decision every week. Getting rid of Riley, wrong.
Honestly,
getting rid of Heisem, wrong. Getting rid of Red, wrong.
The second the season dies.
Using the power on Chag,
and that
wrong.
makes it truly a season of two halves, where Big Brother
every
snatched
week.
defeat from the jaws of victory, as we should have expected. Like really, a solidly good Big Brother season should be the default. If you go through the early days of seasons 2 through 7, they're all good. Most of them great.
Red would have had
Later
Cam
on, we still
nominate
get home runs or triples here and
America.
there, but over time, the batting average just drops. With most modern seasons, like with Big Brother 25, there's a major flaw somewhere. The Achilles heel will get shot. BB23 is similarly pretty good in its first few weeks, then slows down more and more, never shifting momentum. Albeit for interesting reasons. BB22, everyone was hyped for initially since we were finally getting a second All-Star season.
You could argue is okay.
But then it was something that I honestly struggled to think of anything redeeming about. BB21 has an interesting stretch in the middle, but was often run by very hateable people and just misses on panning out to a satisfying conclusion that could have redeemed more.
Not a Jared guy.
BB20 is pretty fun for its first two-thirds, but completely stalls out right after that. BB19 is boring, straightforward, and just kinda icky. They rarely seem able to hold themselves together the whole way nowadays. Be it the imbalanced competitions, or casting that brings in too many unlikable people or wannabe influencers, or twists that limit chances to disrupt the power structure, or the overly simplistic and immature edit, or the seasons just being way too long because the network wants to fill up more weeks. These are all aspects that are heavily ingrained into the show, yet heavily dampen what the game is. And it's particularly frustrating because what the show has been, and could be again, is always trying to shine through. Being a self-hating Big Brother fan is not quite like other famously self-hating fandoms, like Weezer fans or Sonic fans. It's worse. With those, yeah, the fans try out whatever's released to them. But with each album or game, you get through a few songs, a few levels, and you can tell...
They didn't need to take out Heisem to unite the house under Suri. That was not necessary. They could have taken out Cameron and everyone would have been fine.
Okay, this is one of the bad ones.
Like, I think it's like Suri's like, Suri had to take out Red because to protect Jared. It's like, she could have just talked to Jared, like Red once and it would have been fine.
Be done with it.
Like Suri didn't.
Big Brother though,
her social
not
skills,
randomly swinging between obviously great one season and obviously terrible the next. Because the great part is inherent. It's the core format of the game and the real-time, unscripted nature of the show.
Yeah, Kelly caught a timeout.
Even if a season starts with a god-awful twist adjusting
someone
the format,
was going to catch it.
You know that every time they've done that, they've dropped it
most.
after a few weeks and then returned to the standard format. So once we get to that point, there's potential again. Even if the competition seemed lopsided, you always think that maybe, just maybe, the person going on a run will slip up and lose. Even if most of the cast are unlikable people, the game is naturally putting some amount of pressure on those groups, so you can hope for alliances to crack and downfalls to happen. And if there's even just one person there who you actively want to see win the game, it's always theoretically possible that they could pull it off. Some level of hope, even if it's as small as can be. The fact that it's still plainly visible to everyone watching keeps you from completely leaving.
Team leading
because for as miraculous and disappointing as BB25's turn from amazing to terrible was, you know that the opposite trajectory is just as possible.
It's gotta be BB24.
So what I'm going to be concluding with is an example of just that. When I skimmed over recent seasons that...
I think he does such a good job of going through like basically all of BB history, but there's like the through lines throughout the entire video, and obviously it's very intentional of him. The like Paul is kind of like a tenet of the entire thing, and Taylor is used for this point, is now going to be used for this point, and Jag is kind of the icon of comp inequitability, and then they talked about BB25. Really, really well constructed video.
that eventually or immediately lost steam, I conveniently skipped over
Not
season
Terrence
24,
wearing my shirt.
because that's the inverse. So,
From Amazon. So.
one more time. Big Brother 24 starts off as many seasons
I had to
do,
watch the 2X
with
just
one
by watching
core
the
secret
movie,
alliance
really enjoying
forming
it.
early
Oh, it's
to
awesome.
seize control, leaving the outsiders to wander like loose electrons without a
Also, a
real
whole
understanding
BB-25
of the
segment, are you
structure
kidding
of
me?
the house. The few people furthest from the center of that structure are then more actively isolated, ridiculed, and thrown under the bus as those other people on the outs seek comfort in knowing that, hey, at least I'm doing better than that.
It's a shout out to me. You were in one of the
Decently
updates.
common
they
early
showed.
setup that gives viewers more to root
I think I might have
against
been in
than
it
to
once or
root
twice.
for, especially in this case where the treatment of the main outsider feels particularly unfair. This person was Taylor Hale, who I brought up earlier as a case where people's biases have shown themselves through the game. She herself is,
I don't know. You look on Twitter now, people hate Taylor.
beginning the game acting as just
There's truly no winning with Big Brother.
a complete, total,
Nowadays, you know.
normal person. To everyone watching the feeds at the time, all her actions were pretty innocuous. You wouldn't think twice about it. But little by little,
it's
a
beyond
few of
saving.
the other players
It's a loud
start to
minority.
twist
Yeah,
these
you know.
innocuous actions of hers in order to
It's still
then
the
project
loudest.
onto her
Which
cocky,
show is this? This is Big
aggressive,
Brother.
rude characteristics that just don't really exist.
How'd you find
The one
yourself
case I
here?
always remembered hearing
That's
about
my question.
was when somebody dropped a piece of pineapple or something, and Taylor was there and jokingly commented, "Oh no, not the pineapple," and somehow that became retold as a super rude thing for her to say. Like, what starts as people just
I mean, to be fair, Taylor was fucking out of line there. Am I crazy? I don't want to be biased.
saying they get bad vibes from her builds up with these exaggerated cases like Taylor demanded that I do my dishes, or Taylor called me fat, or Taylor's gonna blow up soon.
Look,
It's
generally
weird,
speaking, I like
as if
Taylor,
once
but
people can sense
come
that
on.
a bit of pressure is going against her, it's like, oh, okay, well, let me push that way too. And then it just snowballs from there. Maybe tying into that idea of the easiest way to make someone like you being to bond over your shared dislike of something. Because even one person who the entire time liked Taylor and was friendly with her and felt that this treatment of her was unfair, had a moment where in a group setting, several people were bashing her, and he joined in a bit and made fun of her too. And he said to the cameras right after that, "I feel terrible about saying that, I don't agree with it, I'm not doing it again." But he felt vulnerable in his strategic position since I don't believe his position in the alliance had been solidified at that point. He just knew he needed to fit into the group more, and that was the way to do it.
Yeah, I don't give much grace to something like that. But there's levels to it. And apologizing and everything is all that matters, really. Especially if the apology is accepted.
So
But like,
if he for a moment did that
you know.
consciously, plenty of those same people were doing the same thing subconsciously. It all feeds into itself to make
Like when
one
I'm
of
targeting
the
Tyson,
strongest
it's never
cases of
turning
irrational villainizing that I've seen in the show. She was set up to be unanimously evicted in the very first week, being saved, but still no less of a house pariah when another player quit the game shortly before the eviction. And for what did become that core alliance, speaking in a strictly strategic way, that's kinda exactly what
I don't
you
fuck
want.
with that shit, Wurtenberger.
The scapegoat remains. You can continue to tell people, hey, whoa, don't look up, don't look up. Look down. Look at Taylor. She's trying to ruin your game. Can't let that happen. Could you even imagine someone like Taylor getting to be in a better position than you? That'd be ridiculous. So unfair. You gotta vote her out. It leaves people distracted by the enemy of the week while being unaware of the reality of the situation. So if you're then one of the people actually in power, you can line up your other scapegoats and frankly cruise.
This is another thing that is kind of helped by casting more fans. It's not always the case. Like Daniel was a huge fan, and he was probably the biggest asshole in this whole situation. But just like casting more people who are aware that this kind of thing happens. Maybe this is just me, honestly, because I feel like most people are not. I don't know how self-aware I am in like all moments, but like I was pretty cognizant of like not doing the bad Big Brother things, like not dogpiling on Kirsten and shit like that. Like I think if more people were just aware of the online environment, people would be on better behavior.
Through at least the whole first half of the game, as so many of these early alliances have. However, Immediate convenience only does so much. For a group to work, you want to also have legitimate trust and chemistry. It's best that they actually want to work together, you know? With this group, no, that wasn't the case. Michael realized from the start that he was the last person brought into the group that first week, and is thus likely on the bottom of it. Him and Kyle are some of the few still questioning how Taylor has been treated. And in general, mistrust is brewing as everyone has their own side alliances and close relationships and people on the board who they can influence. It's becoming apparent
it feels like
that
we're
the
at the
women in
end,
this
and
group
this is like
have
still like
more
a
of those
full ass
available,
Big Brother video.
and are already utilizing them when one of their pawns on the board wins HOH, and rather than taking out Taylor, eliminates one of the guys' pawns.
Like, I hear you. You're
so
right.
if we stay the course, they're going to be the ones in the stronger position later on. A lot is
and, like,
bubbling from the
allow
guys'
them
end
to change
of
their
that
behavior a
alliance.
little bit in the right
And after
direction.
only 2 weeks, they're ready to swerve. They're going to strike at that group and build something new. All that they need is for the right person to win HOH, and then they can change the whole course of it. Just kidding, here's a new twist. So what happens here is that everyone partners up with someone, and your partner is then the only person who you can be put on the block with. And this twist, its name doesn't matter. It's nothing. I'm not going to say it.
Bestie, bestie,
Bestie, bestie.
Bestie, bestie.
Bestie, bestie.
Bestie, bestie.
Bestie, bestie.
Bestie, besties.
Fucking God, man, you try to help a show out, you know? Essentially,
how
with
many
this,
times
you can
they
just
need to learn
lock
the
in
duos
your
is not a
own
good
safety
twist.
for the foreseeable future by partnering with someone who you know you'll have the votes against. You know, like maybe a person who isn't in the big alliance that you already have. Yeah.
Although I am closely aligned with Brittany and trust her, I'm doing what's best for the Pose Pack Alliance. This may be a bit of a selfish choice, but if I'm sitting next to Brittany on Thursday, I should have 5 guaranteed votes, and that's huge.
This twist both limits the options for what moves every player can make each week, and also gives a clear temptation of guaranteed safety for those who already have power and knowledge of the game board.
Yeah, there is like
So
a
that
funny
alliance that
idea
has
in
been
the
fracturing
Festy
more and
Besties
more
of like
and is
everyone
just
has
about
an
ready to
enemy
explode.
basically, but
Well, they quickly sew themselves back together as they go along with the mutually beneficial option of partnering with the outsiders to all stay safe. And especially
It
once
seems
one of those
before-
outsiders,
I mean, they
Turner,
also did 'em
wins
on,
HOH, it's clear
BB14
that,
basically.
yeah, we should stay the course. Just keep pushing the house pariah as the house target. Easy. It's all to be expected. To make change and take risks, you want to feel like you have stable ground on which you can see a ways in front of you and properly plan ahead rather than jumping in blind. Twists suddenly changing the game take away that stability and make them have to step way back to the safest spot and reassess. Right now, this group still doesn't want to work together, but the game is reminding them that they should work together. And that leaves the season in a spot where it could be no
Yeah, I just don't
different
think
than
production
the worst of Big
gets
Brother.
this. I don't think they
People
understand
stay in their
how that
spots,
works.
just waiting for the guillotine and make the best of it. For them, it's just easier that way. Players reach this conclusion in different ways all the time. So now,
Stupid-ass walk
after
on.
a brief moment of hope for things to get more exciting, you kinda have to resign yourself to how this is all gonna go. Essentially, almost everyone is in on the plan to nominate Taylor after the veto is used and send her home. Taylor's own partner, Nicole, is as much, if not more, in favor of it than everyone else. But there is some noticeable guilt in her building up, to the point that shortly before the veto competition, she actually has a change of heart and decides to win the veto to protect Taylor. Oh wait, no, that's incorrect, sorry. To the point that she and her ally Daniel decide to take those negative feelings and redirect them back at Taylor to an extreme extent, taking more innocuous statements she made and twisting them to imply that Taylor's maliciously trying to get Nicole.
And this is why I had to destroy her in fantasy football this year.
To quit the game. Yeah.
Good for you, Taylor.
Cool.
Right on. You don't think America's watching all that?
This is getting tense now.
You don't think so? From here on out, do not speak to me.
He thought he was being iconic too, is the crazy thing.
I thought he was joking. Is he serious?
And this is all very different from the already poor treatment she's had. That's all been trashing
He
her
really
behind her
thought he
back
was, like,
and people
cooking,
bonding through
you
their mutual illogical hatred of her. Taylor herself has felt a level of isolation and believes that she's been doing something
confirm
wrong
was
as far as the
Americo
game is
watching
concerned to
that?
get her
What do you
into
mean?
a poor position.
Like the
But the
feeds?
idea of anyone
sure.
here outright believing that she's a bad
Yeah, she
person,
was locked into the
that
season.
comes as a painful shock to her. Especially in the environment of this house where Daniel is berating her and none of the other house guests are doing anything. They're just looking at the ground, enabling it all, leaving her to feel like this view of her is shared. So it's this crushing low point where the game is cruel. People can be cruel. Even the strategy is stagnant
she was
and
locked
boring.
in for sure.
And it's another one of those, why am I watching this show kind of moments. This poor woman has
came
been
back
so
when she was
badly
crying in the
treated for
bathroom.
3 straight weeks.
I'm
and is a
surprised the
target
feeds came
yet
back
again.
on, to be honest.
There's just
to
no
that.
way she can bounce back from this. Right? 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 Right?
Congratulations, Taylor!
So, you know what's funny about this video? I think I would have edited it the opposite way. Where it's like, this is the upside, but most of the time we get the other version, you know? And I understand, like, it's like a speech thing, too, where you want to talk about how big the problem is and then talk about, like, a potential solution to leave the audience in a happier state. But I think a more authentic, like, Big Brother video essay would be like, this could happen, but most of the time...
While
Yeah,
so
that
many
BB25.
forces were pushing the game in that negative direction and appeared
the
to
very
be
rare
succeeding,
moment. I think it's the
several
only
other
time this
things
has happened,
are
to be
coming
honest.
a head around this point. And I'm not going to take my time
I don't-
and give all the
there's no one else
context
you can
and
compare to Taylor
background
in this
craft
way.
all of it into a clean
Like-
storyline. I'm just going to throw out a bunch of the events that are relevant. So at the end of the prior week, Monty had a conversation with Taylor that made him feel much more open to working with her after initially thinking that she was more likely to work with other women in the house. And Michael as well has been a Taylor supporter since him and Brittany have been friendly with her for weeks. Also, Monty is seeing more and more that he doesn't have to sway over Nicole that he thought he had in his core alliance. And that problem is magnified when Alyssa leaks to Kyle that there was a new alliance created earlier consisting
even
of her,
that sped
Nicole,
up.
Amira, Daniel, Terrence, and Jasmine. So Kyle, Michael, and Monty are like, oh, dang it, they can cut us loose anytime if they have that alliance too. And since Amira formed that alliance, it's becoming more and more clear that she's the big player to watch out for. But in week 3, she's showing more of her suspicion and distrust in outsiders like Joseph by always jumping in on his conversations to keep him from talking game. So she feels even more domineering. And since Taylor's being targeted by the whole house again, it seems even more viable that if you're the first to actually pull her into a real alliance, then she'd truly be loyal to you. So Kyle is going through all this stuff with Monty and Joseph and the HOH Turner, who isn't really doing much even though he's HOH, and they realize that as much as the pairs twist is
Poor guy.
constraining their options, there is one duo that they could still nominate and ensure that a shot is taken at the other side. And then the big confrontation between Daniel and Taylor happens. So in addition to all these strategic reasons that they found to risk the short-term safety
Another
that the
strike.
twist gives them and exchange it for potential long-term gain, it also just, in general, feels right to not further enable this sort of meanness. So later that night, those 4 guys, plus Michael and Brittany, manage to pull Taylor upstairs where they lay out this whole situation and expose the original alliance that's been in control to instead swear new loyalties to each other, forming a new alliance called the Leftovers. The next part of their plan put into action.
I hate the leftovers. I love the leftovers. I hate the leftovers being called the leftovers when, like, a lot of the people were in the majority. You know,
is
it's
for
always a pet
Turner
peeve
to
of mine.
act like he's still gonna nominate Taylor after the veto is used and send her home, but without warning,
Didn't they
he
do
will
something like
instead
this in
put up
BB26?
Terrence
There's some sort of...
and Amira.
It's irony. I
So
get it.
after that happens, this whole side of the house
Well,
is blindsided, and from
yeah.
there, everything spirals. The rest of the Leftovers Alliance act just as shocked as they are. It even seems like Taylor didn't know what was going to happen, even she was nearly crying during the nomination ceremony. Everyone's fooled. So these people are scrambling, wondering, who knew about this? Did anyone know about this? Could Turner have done this on his own? No, it's not possible. I'm going to find out. And then they get spun around even more, because right before the renomination ceremony, Turner actually laid out to Daniel that he isn't putting Taylor up. So that once that information comes out, it casts suspicion onto Daniel and throws these
Damn,
people off
Turner.
the scent of the real lines even more.
Why you
So
folding
that
with
happens,
this?
and Daniel and Nicole have an argument, and some people hear that Alyssa might be leaking stuff, and she almost accidentally talks about the original core alliance while Indy's still in the room, and Turner lies to people saying that only
Forgot
2
about
other
Indy.
players knew what he was going to do, and the boys in the Leftovers are still acting concerned and lying to everyone and having fun putting on a performance while Taylor's just chilling in the sun, and it's all so fun. This level of scrambling and conflicting information and lying and confusion and dramatic irony.
Yeah, I just think this whole thing, this week almost by itself, makes me like BB24 more than 26. You know, it's kind of weird. This and like the Michael double eviction. Like it's just like it's a
Because at
preference
least I
thing.
know I have the
I
votes
just
to
like
stay,
this
right?
more. This kind
All
of
happening at once
vibe.
is something that only Big Brother is capable of, and I hope I'm getting it across. even after that all dies down a little bit by the time we get to the eviction vote, it returns because they lie again. Legitimately, everyone outside the Alliance thought Amira was staying, but then she's gone, and like the whole season is born anew. It's such whiplash. Legitimately, one of the lowest lows I have seen as a fan of the show, as the season was nearly locked into a boring, predictable structure, while also just having a lot of this one-sided cruelty, to suddenly being among the highest of highs, as there's joy and chaos and justice. And the season overall doesn't ever fully lose steam after this. And the fact that Taylor manages to win, it's just the cherry on top. Like, I've seen an embarrassing number of seasons of these types of strategy competition game shows. And across all of them, there are very few winners whose ultimate success ever felt so impossible the way her win did. When the whole house was against you right from the jump, and stayed that way for almost 3 whole weeks, winning just doesn't seem to be in the realm of reality. But that's the strength and the curse of Big Brother. As unlikely as something may seem, it's always still possible, and you know it. That's why it's worth it to keep watching.
I'd argue in BB25 it was impossible. I hear you. I like the message. But I would argue it was impossible.
Through all the criticism that I've done here, the real conclusion is that Big Brother is amazing. The premise, game format, and viewing experience of being able to watch almost everything unfold in real time like a fly on the wall is so absurdly strong and unique within its field that it should be a home run almost every single season. The only part that absolutely needs to change each year are the people playing it. That's it. It's not like they're adding a bunch of new rules and twists to football every year. It's just football. And Big Brother only needs to be Big Brother. It naturally offers the drama, the conflict, the sociology, the strategy, the personalities, the humor, the unpredictability, the stakes, and the chicken costumes. Of course, the chicken costumes. It's all there. It's so simple. And yet we're somehow in a situation where I think of it as something that will only be great despite itself. Even right this moment, the 26th season recently finished, and this one as well was legitimately great. The cast was strong, the gameplay was unconventional and exciting, there were few dull weeks, the tide of the game shifted multiple times, there were actually more women winning competitions than men, which is very rare, and the main twist that lasted several weeks was actually, pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised.
You know he doesn't like the twist. You know deep down he doesn't like it. I've never been more convinced of anything.
Surprised if they brought it back, and I wouldn't be immediately mad if they did.
Yeah,
all
he hates
good
it.
signs for the future of Big Brother,
This guy
and I'm not holding my breath for any of
mad.
them. After 25 years of
the
this,
best Big Brother player of
you'd
all
be
time.
fooled.
Agreed.
I'm sure that there are people working on the show who care and understand this stuff and put real effort into fulfilling its absurdly clear potential, but they just don't have the larger sum of power here. When it comes to the big decision,
I just think they need to have twists and stuff nowadays with the way they cast and the way they edit. Like BB10, you can get away with doing nothing because it was an awesome cast and the way they edit in that era was awesome. But nowadays, I just think it'd be boring.
I have to think Big Brother
it's all
is in the hands
they create
of
the
the
problems,
higher-ups
you know?
in suits who put in little effort and largely just bow to network executives without a second thought. They don't listen to criticism unless it's from those executives, and thus let the show be stretched.
What was the difference between BB24 week 3 and BB26 week 3, and I could speak more to 26 because I was more locked in. The week was still really slow on the feeds. Not Cedric's boot week. I thought you were talking about Cedric's boot because that was the big flip of the season, but I guess that'd be Kenny's boot with Tucker trying to flip Cedric's. That week moved a little bit faster actually. All right, I was mixing up my weeks.
Molded and turned into spin-offs.
But it was
in
still
whatever
functionally
way
very
serves the
slow. There wasn't that much
almighty
happening
CBS
on the
schedule.
feeds.
Any
It was just, there was
choices
good
those
moments.
producers actually
26
make
was a moment
themselves
season.
might just be done to keep others from realizing that the show could basically be run by a monkey. To quickly hammer home this point for a third time, you can even look at Big Brother Canada for the same issue. After putting out a lot of good seasons, They managed to put out 2 excellent ones in succession, and it felt like they had everything figured out and perfectly balanced, and there would be nothing stopping the next season from... They got rid of the live feeds. They got rid of the live feeds.
What was the story there?
That sure
Just
as
the
hell was an
network that got
executive
rid of it?
decision. And 2 seasons later, Big Brother Canada is canceled. So, yeah. Until...
It's like BB Can 10. Like I don't even know if BB Can 10 they would consider successful though, like ratings wise. Like
that overlapping issue is somehow
everyone's trying
solved.
to do different things.
Everything great about Big Brother, in the
It's like
grand
whether we like
scheme
the
of
season
things,
or not means
is
literally
at least
nothing.
fighting an uphill battle. But we end up never looking
grand
away
scheme of,
because
what they think
every
it's
small battle that it wins is too rewarding. Whenever there's a week where those cast to the bottom all come together to overthrow the power structure
Nessie, I'm
and
jealous.
humble the players who had been so full of themselves for weeks. Whenever there's a full month of chaos, manipulation, and multiple warring factions. Whenever someone pulls off a move so miraculous that everyone watching initially assumed it was doomed to fail. Whenever there's any moment that makes you appreciate what reality TV can be, and the fact that you just can't write this stuff, the beautiful defeats and ugly victories. It's all too good to give up on. I've been watching this show for 14 years. I still distinctly remember being in the kitchen eating some sort of apple cider ice cream type dessert and seeing on the TV a bunch of people playing fancy cornhole. Not exactly a concise representation of what the show is, but for one reason or another, it pulled me in and kept me watching the rest of the season. And of the 13 completed seasons since then, I would say that at least 5 of them were bad. Not all to the same extent, but...
Let's go! Woohoo! We made it! Oh my god. Whew. Phew. You guys can't see it, but we're good, y'all. We're good. Whew. Alright.
You know, you wouldn't blink at any of them being called that. A generous 8 out of 13 isn't a great score, is it? Like with
Made the
most
cut.
other shows, if they have 2 weak
Matt
seasons
Lagora,
in
you're
a
in
row,
chat right
then that's
now.
it. You're done. You're
Gut
not
check.
watching anymore. There's
Big Brother
no
25
recovery.
is the blank
But for
best
Big
season.
Brother, I haven't
What
missed
number?
a season.
Gut
I've
check.
seen
Don't think
every
too much.
winner since then be crowned. Even in freaking Big Brother reindeer games, which was actually pretty good. Like, I know a Christmas version seems extra silly, and it is, but you gotta believe me, it was legit. Even after the worst that the show has to offer,
19th? I think that's
there
harsh.
isn't a chance in hell
That's
that
a
come
crazy
next
take.
summer,
19th is
I'm
harsh.
not excited for Big Brother to start up again.
Like,
I think of it as like
22,
Big Brother
21,
is a mystery
19,
box show.
15,
Its
16.
total carelessness removes
I
any
didn't
level
like
of
13,
consistency or sound logic
9.
that can be used to predict how well the next season will be run, or
I don't know,
any sort of
it
general
feels-
trajectory. It's just spaghetti on the wall. So no matter what came directly
I think
before
for me it'd probably be
when
like
a new
15.
season comes along, anything could be inside that box.
Like, it's right in the middle.
It has
for
an endless
top
range
12.
of
I
possibilities
love it, but
in both a positive and negative direction. That's the situation that the show puts
Matt
me
was so close to becoming
in,
VIP.
which
Don't worry,
strangely
he wasn't.
is more true to what George Orwell wrote than anything else this show has done. Because with all of these issues in play, I feel like it's painful to say this, but impossible not to. I love Big Brother.
All right, now we go on to what
I
is the
wanna know
best
what the
electric
best competitive
type Pokemon.
electric type.
Let's just keep the vibes going. Okay. Well, that'll do it. Long stream. Got heated in moments. It's okay though. Great video. Shout outs to Shoes in the Dryer. You could find him on Blue Sky. I'll link the video if you guys just want to click it, let it play in the background, get another view on it. Definitely gonna subscribe. Voltorb's a crazy take. I don't think that's the take. Give him views, give him love. You can find him on Blue Sky. Just Shoes in the Dryers, and then give a thumbs up, of course. Please like the video. I love people who care enough about Big Brother to make insanely long videos. It's cool. I think it was such a good storytelling process, the way that like all the threads were continuous throughout. Taylor was here and then she was here. Jag was here and then was here. Suri was used to illustrate like 10 different points, you know. So, anyways, I'm gonna end there. I gotta go to the gym in a bit. But I appreciate it. Is there anyone to raid? Probably not, right? It's late. All right. Well, book club tomorrow should be.